Heo Jae-won is level 1, the lowest of the low. A corpse robber scraping through monster guts in the darkest corner of the kingdom. The goblin lunges at him with a rusty dagger. Jae-won sidesteps, his ribs screaming from 3 days without food. His own knife catches the thing's throat mid-leap. And the moment the blade cuts through, something hits him. Not pain, a flood. Warmth blasts through his chest like someone lit a furnace behind his sternum. A translucent blue window slams open in front of his face. 3 lines of text burn into his vision. Monster slain. Goblin. Experience stolen. 100%. Level up. Then another window. And another. They keep stacking and stacking until he loses count at level 5. The cave spins around him. His legs nearly buckle. Every muscle in his body contracts at once. And through the dizziness, through the shaking hands, and the cold sweat pouring down his neck, our boy grins, because for the first time in his entire life, the number next to his name is not 1. The first goblin drops, and the others freeze. 3 of them huddle near the cave wall, their yellow eyes flicking between the corpse and the madman with the knife. Jae-won doesn't give them time to decide. He kicks off the stone floor and closes the gap in 2 strides. The nearest goblin raises a broken sword. Too slow. Our boy ducks under the swing and drives his blade up through its jaw. The EXP hits him mid-thrust. Another surge, hotter than the last, like drinking fire. His stamina drains right after, a cold wave chasing the heat. Level 6. The third goblin screeches and bolts for the tunnel. Jae-won snatches a rock from the ground and whips it at the back of its skull. The creature stumbles. He's on it before it hits the dirt. 1 stomp to the spine. A flash of blue light. Level 7. The last one tries to beg. It holds up its grimy little hands and chatters something in its broken tongue. Jae-won looks at those hands and remembers the cuffs they locked on his wrists in Hwasong. He remembers the guards dragging him through the mud. He remembers Gang Yoo-jin watching from the balcony, not even bothering to hide his smile. The knife goes through the goblin's chest. Level 8. The cave stinks of rot and old blood. Goblin nests always do, but Jae-won barely notices anymore. He's too busy counting the bodies. 5 goblins in the first chamber. 3 more in the side tunnel. 2 in the crevice near the back. Every single one of them pushes the EXP deeper into his bones. Level 9 hits when he pulls his knife out of a scout near the entrance. Level 10 comes from a warrior twice the size of the others, a brute with a wooden club and a scar across its face. That one actually lands a hit. The club catches Jae-won in the ribs and sends him crashing into the cave wall. Stone cracks behind him. Blood fills his mouth. And for half a second, he thinks this is it. This is where the corpse robber goes out. Then the blue window appears. The warrior goblin stares down at him, club raised for the killing blow. Jae-won spits blood into its eyes and lunges. The knife sinks into its throat. The EXP floods him all at once. His back arches off the ground. Every nerve in his body lights up. And when it stops, when the window finally fades, he's at level 10. He lies there among the corpses, chest heaving, staring at the stalactites above him. His hands shake so badly he can barely hold the knife. The fatigue from so many consecutive kills sits on his chest like a boulder. But he's level 10. 3 days ago, he was nothing. 3 days ago, he was on his knees in the Grand Hall of Hwasong. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows. The council sat in a semicircle before him, their robes heavy with gold thread and old power. At the center, in the highest chair, sat Gang Yoo-jin. He was young for a council head. Maybe 25, sharp jaw, cold eyes, and the kind of smile that never reached anything above his cheekbones. The hall was packed. Every adventurer of note in the kingdom stood along the walls. They came to watch the execution. Not of his body, of his name. The speaker read the charges in a flat voice. Heo Jae-won, son of Heo Ha-jun. Level 1. Permanent. Incurable. Drain on the kingdom's resources and a stain on its honor. By decree of the council, he was stripped of his rank, his title, and his right to enter any city under Baekje's banner. Gang Yoo-jin leaned forward in his chair. He didn't even pretend to look sorry. He just waved his hand and told the guards to remove the trash from his sight. Jae-won screamed at them. He told them he trained every day, that he killed monsters, that the EXP simply never registered. No one listened. The guards dragged him through the hall by his arms. The adventurers spat on the floor as he passed. One of them muttered, "Corpse robber," under his breath. The name stuck. Outside the gates, they threw him into the dirt and tossed a rusty knife after him. The captain said if he ever showed his face in Hwasong again, they'd bury him under the east wall. Then the gates slammed shut, and Jae-won was alone. Back in the cave, our boy pushes himself up on his elbows. His ribs ache where the goblin's club connected. The cuts on his arms are still weeping blood. But he's standing. He's level 10. And he finally understands what he is. All those years of killing monsters and getting nothing back. All those tests. All those humiliations. All those nights staring at the ceiling wondering why the system rejected him. The system never rejected him. It just worked differently for him. For everyone else, the EXP comes in fractions, a percentage based on contribution. Kill a monster with a party, and you split the reward. But Jae-won doesn't split anything. When he kills something, he takes it all. Every single point. 100%. He doesn't earn EXP, he steals it. He tests it one more time. A lone goblin scavenges near the cave mouth, picking through a pile of bones. Jae-won creeps up behind it, his bare feet silent on the cold stone. The fatigue is still there, a low ache in his limbs. But he needs to be sure. He grabs the goblin by the neck and slams it against the wall. The knife flashes once. Blue light. Level 11. No question now. He stumbles back against the cave wall and slides down until he's sitting on the floor. His heart is pounding so hard he can feel it in his teeth. The power has a price. Every kill drains his stamina. Every level up feels like running a mile at full sprint. But the trade is insane. In 2 hours, he's gained what takes most adventurers 2 years of grinding. And he's just getting started. He looks at the cave entrance and sees the first light of dawn bleeding through the cracks. The forest outside is dangerous. Patrols sweep through these woods every morning. If they find him here with a pile of goblin corpses and a level far above what he should have, the questions will start. And questions lead back to Hwasong, to Gang Yoo-jin, to the reason he was really banished. Because our boy isn't stupid. He's been thinking about it for 3 days. A permanent level 1 is embarrassing, sure. But you don't banish someone for being weak. You banish them when they're a threat. And the only threat Jae-won ever posed was to the secret buried under his family's land. The monarch's heart. He doesn't know exactly what it is yet. But he knows Gang Yoo-jin wanted it badly enough to destroy a noble house. And whatever Gang Yoo-jin wants, Jae-won plans to take. He pushes himself up and gathers his supplies. The rusty knife he sharpened on a flat stone yesterday. A water skin filled from a stream near the cave. A strip of dried meat he stole off a dead adventurer 2 nights ago. That's everything he owns. That's everything he needs. Because the power is real. He can feel it humming under his skin. A low current of potential. Every monster he kills makes him stronger. Every fight pushes him closer to the man he needs to become. Not a corpse robber. Not a disgrace. A force. He steps out of the cave and into the gray dawn light. The forest spreads out before him, thick with shadows and the distant sounds of creatures stirring. Somewhere deeper in the trees, something roars. It sounds big. It sounds dangerous. Our boy tightens his grip on the knife, and he walks toward it. The roar rips through the trees again, closer this time. Our boy adjusts his grip on the rusty knife. He moves through the undergrowth as fast as his aching ribs allow. The cuts on his arms have stopped bleeding, but the sting is still there. Every step sends a dull throb through his legs. That last level up hit him harder than the goblin's club did, but he can't stop now. The forest is waking up around him. Birds explode from the branches overhead. Something crashes through the brush about 40 meters to his left. Jae-won drops into a crouch behind a fallen log. His breathing slows. His eyes scan the tree line. Then he hears voices. Not monster voices, human ones. The patrol moves in a loose formation. 4 figures in leather armor with swords drawn. They're sweeping the area with the kind of bored efficiency that comes from doing this 100 times before. One of them kicks over a rock and spits on the ground. He complains that there's nothing out here except weeds and mud. The one in front waves for them to spread out. Jae-won watches them work. He knows how patrols operate. He trained with these people. He ran drills with them for years. And now they're hunting him. Because Gang Yoo-jin probably put out word that a corpse robber escaped into the woods. Or maybe they just don't like loose ends. The patrol leader stops dead in his tracks. He crouches and studies something on the ground. Then he looks up, straight toward the log. Jae-won's heart slams against his ribs. The leader calls out that he sees tracks, fresh ones, and they lead toward the cave. Our boy doesn't wait for the rest. He moves. The log explodes behind him as a bolt of mana slams into the wood. A mage. Of course, they brought a mage. The second bolt screams past his ear and shatters a tree trunk 3 meters ahead. Jae-won dives into a roll and comes up running. His legs burn. His lungs are already screaming from the earlier fights, but the power is humming under his skin, a low current of adrenaline and stolen EXP. He's faster than he should be. Level 11 fast, the patrol shouts behind him. The leader orders them to fan out and cut him off at the ravine. Jae-won knows the ravine. It's a dead end, unless you know where the fallen bridge is. He knows where the fallen bridge is. He hunted these woods with his father when he was 10 years old. This is his territory, not theirs. He cuts hard to the right and vaults over a fallen oak. The branches tear at his shirt and scratch fresh lines across his chest. He doesn't slow down. The mage fires again. The bolt hits a boulder and sprays shrapnel across his back. Jae-won grits his teeth and keeps running. Blood trickles down his spine. The ravine opens up ahead, a 20-meter gash in the forest floor. Jae-won skids to a stop at the edge. The drop is sheer. The patrol is closing in behind him. The leader shouts that he's cornered. Our boy doesn't answer. He's too busy looking for the handhold he knows is there. His father showed it to him when he was a kid. A cluster of roots just below the lip. He drops over the edge. The patrol leader screams at him to stop. Jae-won's fingers find the roots. He swings his body into the ravine wall and clings there, barely breathing. Above him, boots pound to a stop. The leader curses. He asks if anyone saw where the trash went. One of them says maybe he fell. The mage leans over the edge and peers into the darkness. Jae-won presses himself flat against the rock. His arms are shaking from the strain. The cuts on his fingers reopen and blood slicks the roots. The mage stares down for a long moment. Then he pulls back and says there's nothing down there. He must have run along the edge. The leader spits again. He says the corpse robber can't hide forever. Then the boots retreat. Jae-won waits until the silence stretches for a full minute. Then he climbs. His arms are on fire by the time he pulls himself over the lip. He collapses onto his back and stares up at the gray sky. His chest heaves. Sweat and blood soak into the dirt beneath him. He just escaped a patrol at level 11. 3 days ago, he was a permanent level 1 who couldn't win a fight against a training dummy. 3 days ago, he was worthless. Now look at him. He pushes himself up on his elbows and scans the tree line. The patrol is gone. But they'll be back. They know someone was in that cave. They know someone killed those goblins. And eventually, they'll figure out who. Jae-won needs to move. He forces himself to stand. His legs tremble. The world tilts for a second, and he has to brace himself against a tree. The fatigue from the level-ups is hitting him all at once. Every muscle in his body feels like it's been wrung out. His head pounds. His vision blurs at the edges. He takes one step, then another. The forest blurs around him. The trees smear into streaks of brown and green. His foot catches on a root. He stumbles forward and crashes through a wall of ferns. The ground drops away beneath him. He tumbles down a slope, rolling over rocks and through dead leaves. His shoulder slams into a stump. Pain flares through his collarbone. He comes to a stop at the bottom of a shallow gully. The sky spins above him. Jae-won tries to push himself up and fails. His arms won't hold his weight. His legs won't move. He knew that when he started. But knowing it and feeling it are two very different things. Right now, it feels like every bone in his body is about to snap from the pressure of all that stolen EXP. Too much, too fast. His body wasn't ready for this. He trained for years and never gained a single level. Now he's gained 11 in a few hours. His muscles are tearing themselves apart, trying to keep up with the growth. Jae-won lies in the cold mud and stares up at the branches overhead. The roar echoes through the forest again. It sounds closer than before. Jae-won closes his eyes, and then he laughs. It starts as a wheeze, a thin rasp of air through clenched teeth. Then it builds into something louder, something raw. He's lying in a ditch. He's covered in blood and mud. A patrol is hunting him. A monster is probably about to eat him. And he's laughing, because for the first time in his entire miserable life, he's actually getting stronger. The system finally works for him. Not the way it works for everyone else. Not the fair way. The way that lets him take what he needs. The way that lets him fight back. He stops laughing and stares up at the sky. His father's face flickers through his mind. Heo Jae-won, standing in the training yard, showing him how to grip a sword. His father telling him that strength doesn't come from talent. It comes from refusing to stay down. Jae-won clenches his fist in the mud. His father is dead. His family's land is stolen. His name is dirt in the kingdom he bled for. But he's still breathing. He's still here. And he's not staying down. He forces himself onto his side. The movement sends a spike of agony through his ribs. He ignores it. He gets one knee under him and pushes up. His body screams at him to stop. He doesn't stop. He gets his other foot under him. He stands. The world sways. He plants his feet and rides it out. The roar sounds again, deeper and louder than before. It's coming from the north. Jae-won turns toward it. His knife is still in his hand. He doesn't remember holding onto it through the fall. But there it is. Rusty and chipped and small, against whatever is making that noise. He looks at the blade. Then he looks toward the roar. The smart thing to do is run. The smart thing is to find another cave, lie low, and recover his strength. But Jae-won didn't survive 3 days in the forest as a level 1 by being smart. He survived by being stubborn. And right now, something is roaring in his forest. Something big. Something that probably has a lot of EXP. He tightens his grip. And he walks. Every step is a negotiation with his legs. His muscles beg him to stop, and his ribs remind him with every breath that they're still bruised from the goblin's club. But he keeps moving. The trees thin out. The ground slopes upward. The roar is so close now that he can feel it in his chest, a vibration that shakes the leaves on the branches. He reaches the top of the rise and looks down, and freezes. The clearing below is a slaughterhouse. 4 adventurers lie dead in the trampled grass. Their armor is crushed. Their weapons are shattered. Blood pools in the depressions their bodies made in the mud. In the center of the clearing stands an ogre. Not a small one. Not the kind they use for low-rank quests to train new recruits. This thing is 8 meters tall. Its skin is gray and thick, scarred from 100 fights. One of its tusks is broken off at the root. Its eyes are yellow and small and filled with a cold, ancient hunger. It holds a tree trunk in one hand. The tree trunk still has roots and branches attached. The ogre swings it like a club. Jae-won watches from the ridge. His heart is pounding. His fingers are numb around the knife handle. The ogre hasn't seen him yet. It's too busy stomping on one of the dead adventurers to make sure the job is finished. The crunch of bone echoes through the clearing. Our boy doesn't move. He watches the ogre work. And he thinks about what it would mean to kill something like that. The EXP from a monster this big would be insane. It would push him past level 15, maybe past 20. It would give him the strength to walk back into Manhwa and register as an adventurer without anyone asking questions. But he can barely stand. He can barely hold his knife. The ogre finishes with the bodies and sniffs the air. Its head turns. Slowly, deliberately, toward the ridge. The yellow eyes lock onto Jae-won. The ogre grins. It's the ugliest thing he's ever seen. A mouth full of broken teeth and old blood. The ogre hefts its tree trunk and takes a step toward him. The ground shakes. Jae-won doesn't run. He looks at the knife. He looks at the ogre, and he makes a choice. He turns and walks back into the trees. Not running, walking. Because running would tell the ogre he's prey, and he's not prey anymore. He's a hunter. He's just a smart enough hunter to know when the prey is too big. The ogre roars behind him. The sound shakes the forest and sends birds scattering for kilometers in every direction. But the ogre doesn't follow. It doesn't care about one thin human with a rusty knife. It has 4 bodies to eat. Jae-won walks until the clearing is out of sight. He walks until the sound of the ogre's feasting fades behind him. Then he finds a hollow under a fallen tree and crawls inside. The space is tight. Roots hang down around him like a cage. But it's dry. And it's hidden. Jae-won sits in the dark and wraps his arms around his knees. His whole body is shaking. Not from the cold, from the exhaustion, from the adrenaline finally crashing out of his system. He presses his forehead against his knees. His breath comes in short, ragged gasps. The tears don't come. He's too tired to cry. But something else rises up in his chest. Something harder than grief. He thinks about the patrol that hunted him through the woods. He thinks about the council that stripped his name and threw him into the dirt. He thinks about Gong Yu-jin sitting in his chair and waving his hand like Jae-won was nothing. Like his family was nothing. Like his father never bled for the kingdom. His fist tightens on the knife handle. His knuckles go white. His voice comes out as a rasp. He whispers that he will return. The words echo softly in the hollow. He says they will know the truth. He says his father's name will mean something again. He says he will make sure of it. The forest is silent outside. Even the birds have stopped singing. Jae-won closes his eyes. The knife rests across his lap. The blood on his arms is dry now. The cuts are already starting to scab over. His body is healing faster than it should. Another side effect of the power. Another thing he doesn't fully understand yet. But he will. He'll figure it out. He'll push himself until he knows every limit and every rule. Then he'll break them. That's who he is now. Not a corpse robber, not a disgrace, a force. He opens his eyes. The hollow is dark. The day is fading into evening. He's been sitting here for hours. His legs are stiff. His ribs still ache. But the worst of the fatigue has passed. He can move again. He crawls out of the hollow and stands in the failing light. The forest is different at dusk. The shadows are longer. The sounds are sharper. But Jae-won isn't afraid of the dark. He spent 3 days in these woods with nothing but a knife and his own stubbornness. He knows how to survive. He knows how to hunt. And he knows where to go next. Yeonhwa is east of here, a town on the border of Baekje's territory, far enough from Hwasong that nobody will recognize his face. Big enough that a stranger with a false name won't draw attention. He'll register as a low-level adventurer. He'll take quests. He'll kill monsters. And he'll keep getting stronger until the day he walks back through the gates of Hwasong. And Gang Yoo-jin sees him coming. Jae-won turns east and starts walking. The rusty knife is in his hand. The roar of the ogre fades behind him. Ahead of him, the first lights of dawn are breaking over the mountains. A new day, a new name, a new beginning. And our boy isn't planning to waste a single second of it. The gates of Yeonhwa are smaller than Hwasong's, but they're still guarded. 2 men in leather armor stand at the entrance with spears crossed. Jae-won watches from the tree line for a full hour. He counts the shifts. He notes the way the guards check papers. And he sees something that makes his chest tighten. They're not checking faces. They're checking guild cards. A stamped bronze badge is all it takes to walk through. Nobody looks at the name. Nobody cares who you are, as long as the guild says you're registered. Jae-won exhales. He's been worrying about the wrong thing for 3 days. The banishment from Hwasong went out by courier bird. It would take weeks for that news to reach a border town like Yeonhwa. By then, he'll be long gone. Or strong enough that it won't matter. He steps out of the trees. The rusty knife is tucked into his belt. The water skin slaps against his hip. He's still wearing the same torn clothes he was thrown out in. He looks like a corpse that forgot to stop walking. But he walks like a man who knows where he's going. The guards glance at him as he approaches. One of them snorts. He asks if the kid got lost in the woods. Jae-won doesn't slow down. He asks where the Adventurers Guild is. The guard blinks. His partner raises an eyebrow. Then the first one laughs and says, "It's the big building with the sword sign." He says you can't miss it. Then he adds that maybe the kid should find a bath first. Jae-won walks past them without another word. The gate closes behind him. Yeonhwa is smaller than Hwasong, but it's alive. The streets are packed with merchants and hunters. A blacksmith's hammer rings out from somewhere to the left. The smell of roasting meat drifts from a stall. Jae-won's stomach tightens. The dried meat from the dead adventurer ran out yesterday. He's been running on water and stubbornness for the past 18 hours. But food can wait. The guild hall is exactly where the guards said it would be. A 2-story stone building with crossed swords carved above the door. A wooden board out front is covered in quest notices. Jae-won pushes the door open. The inside smells like ale and old leather. A few adventurers are scattered around the common room. Nobody looks up when he enters. The reception desk is manned by a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper haircut. She looks him up and down. Then she asks if he got lost on the way to the infirmary. Jae-won stops in front of the desk. He says he's here to register. The receptionist stares at him for 3 full seconds. Then she shrugs and pulls out a form. She asks for his name. Jae-won hesitates. His name is a target. His name is the thing Gang Yoo-jin spat on in front of the council. He needs a new one, at least for now. He says Jong-min. The receptionist writes it down without blinking. She asks for his level. He tells her 11. This time she does blink. She looks at his torn clothes. She looks at the rusty knife. Then she asks if he's joking. Jae-won pulls a single goblin ear from his pocket and drops it on the desk. The registration token for any new hunter. Proof of a solo kill. The receptionist picks up the ear. It's still crusted with dried blood. She turns it over. Then she stamps the form. She slides a bronze badge across the desk and says, "Welcome to the guild." The badge is cold in his hand. It's smaller than he expected, but it's real. He's an adventurer now. He's Jang-min of Yeonhwa. At least on paper. He pins the badge to his torn shirt. Then he walks over to the quest board. The board is packed. Most of the notices are for goblin nests and wolf packs. Low-rank stuff. The kind of quests that pay in copper and silence. But Jae-won isn't looking for copper. He's looking for levels. His eyes scan the board. Goblin extermination. Wolf pack culling. Escort mission to the next town over. Then he sees it. A yellowed notice pinned near the bottom. Ogre. Sighted in the eastern woods. 4 dead adventurers confirmed. Reward is higher than the other quests combined. Rank restriction is flexible. Jae-won reaches for it. A voice behind him says, "That's a bad idea." Jae-won turns. The man standing behind him is young, maybe a year or two older than Jae-won. He's wearing leather armor that looks brand new. His sword is polished to a shine. His boots still have creases from the shop. Everything about him screams rookie, except his eyes. His eyes are terrified. The man introduces himself as Baek Do-hyun, level 8. He's been in Manhwa for 2 weeks. Then he says the ogre quest has already killed 4 people. He says it's suicide. Jae-won looks at him. He asks if Do-hyun is trying to talk him out of it. Do-hyun shakes his head. He asks if he can come along. Jae-won stares at him. The guy is level 8. He's shaking. His hand is resting on his sword hilt like he's never drawn it in his life. And he just asked to hunt an ogre. Jae-won asks why. Do-hyun swallows. He says his sister is sick. He says the medicine costs more silver than a year of goblin quests. He says the ogre bounty covers it. Then he says he knows he can't kill it alone. Jae-won studies his face. There's no lie there, no angle, just a man desperate enough to follow a stranger into the woods. Jae-won pulls the quest notice off the board. He says they leave at dawn. Do-hyun's face goes through 3 emotions in half a second. Relief, terror, then something that looks a lot like hope. He says he'll be ready. The eastern woods are thicker than the ones Jae-won came from. The trees press in on both sides. The path is barely a path anymore. Jae-won walks in front. Do-hyun follows 3 steps behind. He's been talking for the past hour. About his sister. About the village they grew up in. About the healer who said she has maybe 6 months without the medicine. Jae-won doesn't respond to most of it, but he doesn't tell him to shut up either. Do-hyun asks how they're going to kill it. Jae-won says he'll handle the ogre. He tells Do-hyun to watch his back. Do-hyun asks what that means. Jae-won stops walking. He points up ahead. The clearing opens in front of them. It's the same clearing. The same one where Jae-won watched the ogre eat 4 people 2 days ago. The bodies are gone now, but the blood is still on the grass. And the ogre is still here. It's sitting against a tree with its eyes closed. The tree trunk club rests across its knees. Its chest rises and falls with each breath. It's sleeping. Jae-won pulls the rusty knife from his belt. Do-hyun's face goes white. He whispers that the plan was to plan something. Jae-won says the plan is to kill it before it wakes up. Then he moves. He crosses the clearing in complete silence. His bare feet barely touch the grass. The ogre's skin is thick enough to turn a sword, but Jae-won isn't aiming for its chest. He climbs the tree behind the ogre. Slowly, silently. The branch creaks under his weight. The ogre doesn't stir. Jae-won positions himself directly above its head. Then he drops. The rusty knife goes into the ogre's right eye. The roar shakes the entire clearing. Do-hyun screams. Jae-won holds on. The ogre thrashes. Its hands swipe at its face. Jae-won rips the knife sideways and pulls it out. Blood sprays across his chest. The ogre's right eye is gone. It's blind on one side, but it's not dead. It swings the tree trunk in a wild arc. Jae-won drops off its shoulder and rolls. The trunk slams into the ground where he was half a second ago. Dirt explodes. Do-hyun is frozen at the edge of the clearing. Jae-won shouts at him to move. Do-hyun snaps out of it and draws his sword. The ogre turns its remaining eye toward Jae-won. It's furious. It's in pain. And it's still strong enough to flatten a house. It charges. Jae-won runs toward it instead of away. The tree trunk swings horizontally. Jae-won drops into a slide. The trunk passes over his head. He feels the wind of it. He comes up under the ogre's guard. The knife goes into its ankle. The tendon snaps. The ogre stumbles. Its left leg buckles. It drops to one knee. The ground shakes. Jae-won scrambles up its back. He grabs the coarse hair on its shoulders. The ogre reaches for him. Its hand closes around his leg. It squeezes. Jae-won feels the bone creak. He screams, but he doesn't let go. He drives the knife into the base of the ogre's skull. The blade skips off the thick bone. He hits it again and again. The ogre's grip loosens. Its eye rolls back. Jae-won finds the gap between the vertebrae. He puts everything he has into one last thrust. The knife sinks into the hilt. The ogre stops moving. Then the EXP hits him. It's not like the goblins. It's not like anything he's felt before. The ogre's life force crashes into his chest like a wave of fire. His vision goes white. His muscles lock up. He can feel every fiber of his body screaming. The level-ups hit him all at once. His back arches. He falls off the ogre's shoulders. He hits the ground hard. He can't move. He can't breathe. The power is still surging through him. It's too much. It's way too much. His body wasn't ready for a jump this big. The fatigue is crushing him. The muscle tearing is worse than anything the goblins did. His vision flickers. He's going to pass out. He hears Do-hyun's voice from somewhere far away. It's asking if he's alive. Jae-won tries to answer. His mouth won't move. Do-hyun's face appears above him. He looks terrified. He asks what's happening. Jae-won's eyes roll back. Everything goes dark. He wakes up with his head on something soft. Sunlight is in his eyes. His whole body feels like it's been set on fire and put out with a hammer. He groans. Do-hyun's voice says, "Thank the gods." Jae-won turns his head. He's lying on a bedroll. Do-hyun is sitting next to him. They're still in the clearing. The ogre's corpse is 10 meters away, already starting to smell. Jae-won tries to sit up. His arms don't cooperate. Do-hyun pushes him back down. He says Jae-won has been out for 6 hours. He says he dragged him away from the ogre and waited. He says he thought Jae-won was dead 3 different times. He asks if Do-hyun took the ear. Do-hyun holds up a leather pouch. The ogre's ear is inside, along with its left tusk. Proof of the kill. Enough for the bounty. Jae-won nods. His throat is dry. Do-hyun hands him a water skin. Jae-won drinks. The water tastes like metal and dirt. It's the best thing he's ever had. He looks at his hands. The cuts from the goblins are gone. The bruises are faded to yellow. His body healed while he was unconscious. Faster than before. The power is getting stronger. Or he is. Maybe both. He sits up slowly. His ribs ache. His leg is still bruised where the ogre grabbed him. But he can move. He can stand. He pushes himself to his feet. Do-hyun stares at him like he's watching a ghost walk. He asks how Jae-won is already standing. Jae-won doesn't answer. Level 15. He can feel it in his bones. The strength is different now. His knife feels lighter. The world feels slower. He turns to Do-hyun. He says they need to get back to the guild. Do-hyun nods. He asks what happens after that. Jae-won looks east, toward Hwasong, toward the council, toward Gang Eugene. He says he keeps getting stronger. Do-hyun doesn't ask what for. He already knows the look in Jae-won's eyes. It's the same look his own reflection had when the healer gave his sister 6 months. The look of a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Do-hyun knows that look. He picks up the leather pouch with the ogre's ear and tusk. He says they need to move before the smell draws every scavenger in the woods. Jae-won nods and takes a step. His left leg buckles the second he puts weight on it. The bruise where the ogre grabbed him is a black and purple splotch the size of a dinner plate. Do-hyun catches him under the arm without a word. He tells Jae-won he's not walking anywhere on his own. Jae-won tries to argue. His mouth moves, but the sound comes out like a dry wheeze. Do-hyun ignores him and slings Jae-won's arm over his shoulders. They start the long, limping slog toward Yeonhwa. The sun is already dropping behind the tree line. The forest is quiet except for their footsteps and Jae-won's ragged breathing. After half a kilometer, his head lolls forward. Do-hyun is talking, but the words blur into a low hum. The world fades to black for the second time that day. He wakes up in a room, small in-room with a cracked ceiling and a dirty window. Morning light cuts through the grime and hits him right in the face. He's lying on a straw mattress that smells like old hay and someone else's sweat. His clothes are folded on a wooden chair across the room. His rusty knife is on the nightstand next to an empty cup. He tries to sit up and his entire body screams at him. Every muscle feels like it's been torn off the bone and sewn back on backward. This is the after effect of swallowing an ogre's worth of experience in one gulp. The system pumped his level up too fast. His body is still catching up and it's furious about it. He grits his teeth and pushes through the pain. The room spins for a few seconds, then settles. He swings his legs off the bed and plants his feet on the cold floor. He stands. His legs hold. That's already better than last night. The cuts from the goblins are thin pink lines now. The deeper gash on his forearm from the ogre's grip is sealed and yellowing at the edges. Faster than before. Another side effect of the power he still doesn't fully understand. He takes a deep breath and feels the new strength humming underneath the 8. Level 15. He could take on a C-rank monster barehanded now and probably walk away. The door swings open. Do-hyun walks in carrying a clay bowl and a heel of dark bread. He grins and says the sleeping prince finally decided to join the living. Jae-won asks how long he was out. Do-hyun says since last night, and it's already past noon. He hands Jae-won the bowl. Thin vegetable stew with a few stringy bits of rabbit floating in it. Jae-won eats like a man who hasn't seen food in a week. Do-hyun sits on the edge of the bed and watches him. He says the innkeeper almost threw them out because Jae-won looked like a corpse when they arrived. Do-hyun paid for the room with the last of his silver. Jae-won says he'll pay him back when they collect the bounty. Do-hyun dangles the leather pouch in front of him. The ogre's ear and left tusk are still inside. Jae-won finishes the stew and pulls on his clothes. He straps the rusty knife to his belt where it belongs. They leave the inn and step into the midday chaos of Yeonhwa. Merchants are shouting over each other in the market square. Adventurers haul sacks of monster parts toward the guild hall. No one looks twice at a scruffy bronze badge and his nervous sidekick. Jae-won keeps his head down and his hood up. The banishment order from Hwasong hasn't reached this far yet. He's still Jongmin the nobody. He plans to keep it that way as long as possible. The guild hall is louder than yesterday. A pack of adventurers are arguing over a quest at the main board. Do-hyun weaves through the crowd and leads Jae-won to the reception desk. The same board clerk is sitting there, flipping through a ledger. Jae-won drops the leather pouch on the counter. The ogre's ear and tusk spill out with a wet thud. The clerk's eyes go wide. She picks up the tusk with 2 fingers like it might bite her. She asks if they actually killed an ogre, just the 2 of them. Do-hyun says yes and points at the proof. She calls over a senior assessor. An old man with a brass monocle shuffles over and examines the tusk under a magnifying lens. He grunts and says it's authentic. The bounty is 1,000 silver coins. The clerk counts out 2 stacks of 500 and slides them across the counter. Do-hyun stares at the coins like he's never seen that much money in his life. His hands are shaking. He whispers that now he can buy the medicine for his sister, the one the healer said would keep her alive another year. Jae-won tells him to go. Do-hyun hesitates and says they were supposed to split it. Jae-won says Do-hyun kept him alive when he was dead weight in the clearing. He earned every copper. Do-hyun grips the coins and bolts out of the guild hall without looking back. Jae-won pockets his own share. 500 silver feels heavy in his pouch, enough to buy real gear and supplies for the road east. He's about to leave when a hand like a slab of iron lands on his shoulder. He turns. The man attached to that hand is built like a stone wall with a bad attitude. Shaved head, a jagged scar running from his eyebrow down to his jaw, and steel gauntlets that have seen a lot of blood. 2 more thugs are standing behind him with their arms crossed. The big man says that was a nice little ogre hunt. He asks how a nobody like Jangmin managed to take down something that had already killed 4 seasoned adventurers. Jae-won says they got lucky. The man laughs, and it sounds like rocks grinding together. He says luck doesn't kill an 8-meter ogre. He says he knows who Jae-won really is. Jae-won's heart stops for 1 beat. The man leans in close enough that Jae-won can smell the cheap ale on his breath. He says he's the guy who sent that patrol into the eastern woods 3 days ago. The patrol that came back empty-handed because some rat slipped through the ravine. Jae-won doesn't react. He asks what the man wants. The man straightens up and cracks his neck. He says his name is Hwang Seok-jun, C-rank adventurer and leader of the Iron Fang Party. He says he doesn't like newbies who lie about their strength and think they're hot stuff because they got 1 lucky kill. He's going to teach Jae-won a lesson in front of everyone. Jae-won tells him he's not interested. Seok-jun's hand shoots out and grabs Jae-won by the collar. He lifts him half off the ground and says if Jae-won refuses the duel, he'll find that scrawny kid with the sick sister, Do-hyun. He'll break both his legs and make sure no healer in Yeonhwa touches him. Jae-won's eyes go flat, cold, the same look his own reflection had right before he stabbed the ogre in the eye. He says fine, he'll fight. Seok-jun grins and drops him. He says the guild arena is open, and he's already reserved it for the afternoon. They go outside to a large coliseum behind the guild hall. Pit of packed sand surrounded by wooden stands that can hold maybe 200 people. Along the far side are a row of iron cages bolted to the stone wall. Dire wolves pacing behind the bars. A juvenile wyvern chained and sedated with a leather hood over its head. A stone-skinned troll slumped in the corner of the biggest cage with manacles on its wrists. The guild uses them for practice fights and public executions. Today they're going to be part of Jae-won's plan. Seok-jun and his 2 cronies take one side of the pit. Jae-won walks to the center of the sand alone. Word spreads fast. Adventurers stream out of the guild hall and fill the stands. Someone starts taking bets, and the odds are heavily against the bronze badge nobody. Seok-jun cracks his knuckles and draws a spiked mace from a rack on the wall. He says no weapons and no armor. Bare fists only. Jae-won unbuckles his rusty knife and tosses it to the edge of the pit. The clerk from the reception desk acts as referee. She raises a red flag and drops it. Seok-jun charges. He's fast for a man that size, and his first swing nearly takes Jae-won's head off. Jae-won sidesteps, but the gauntlet clips his shoulder. The impact rattles his teeth. His body is still bruised and sore from the ogre fight. He can't trade blows with this guy. He drops into a low stance and starts circling. Seok-jun taunts him and calls him a coward. Jae-won ignores it. His eyes flick to the monster cages on the far wall. The dire wolves are pacing and snapping at the bars. The wyvern's chain is rusted and weak in one spot. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He sprints toward the cages. The crowd boos and thinks he's running away. Seok-jun roars and chases after him with the mace raised. Jae-won reaches the dire wolf cage first. He grabs the iron lock with both hands and twists with every ounce of his level 15 strength. The metal groans and then snaps. The cage door swings open. 3 dire wolves explode out of the darkness. They're lean, starved, and the first thing they see is Seok-jun charging at them with a mace. They lunge. Seok-jun screams something ugly and swings his weapon in a wide arc. The first wolf takes the mace to the skull and drops. The second one latches onto his gauntlet and starts shaking it like a rag. The third circles around. The third wolf circles around, snarling low in its throat. Seok-jun swings the mace in a wild panic, missing by a full meter. The crowd in the stands is on its feet now, screaming and throwing copper coins into the pit. Jae-won doesn't watch the fight. He's already moving along the wall toward the wyvern's cage. His shoulder throbs from Seok-jun's gauntlet hit, but the pain keeps his head sharp. The wyvern shifts in its chains, leather hood muffling a guttural hiss. Jae-won scans the iron bars and finds what he's looking for. A rusted link near the bolt, half-eaten by wyvern acid and years of neglect. He wraps both hands around the chain and pulls until his arms shake. The rusted link snaps with a crack that echoes across the pit. Every head in the stands turns toward the sound. The wyvern jerks awake and its hood falls off. Yellow reptilian eyes snap open and lock onto the nearest moving target. Seok-jun, who just crushed the second wolf's skull under his boot. The big man freezes. The wyvern lunges. The chain still shackles its hind leg to the wall, but the slack is enough. Its jaws close around Seok-jun's mace arm and it rips. Seok-jun howls something wet and primal as his weapon clatters to the sand. The third wolf sees its opening and sinks its teeth into his calf. He goes down hard, face first, eating sand. Jae-won walks past the carnage without looking at it. The clerk at the edge of the pit is clutching her red flag with white knuckles. She stares at him and asks if he's insane. Jae-won says the duel is over. She swallows and drops the flag. The guild healers rush past him with stretchers and tourniquets. Seok-jun is still breathing, but he won't be swinging a mace for a long time. The 2 cronies who came with him are backing away into the crowd, pale as milk. Jae-won retrieves his rusty knife from the sand and walks out of the arena. No one tries to stop him. The sun is a low orange smear behind the rooftops when Jae-won leaves the guild hall. He's got his 500 silver and a fresh set of bandages wrapped around his bruised ribs. Do-hyun finds him in the market square, out of breath and panicked. He grabs Jae-won by the sleeve and asks if the rumors are true. Jae-won says it depends on which rumors. Do-hyun says people are saying the bronze badge, nobody fed a C rank to a wyvern. Jae-won shrugs and says Seok-jun fed himself. Do-hyun laughs, then stops when he sees Jae-won isn't smiling. He asks if the threat against him was real. Jae-won tells him Seok-jun won't be threatening anyone for a while. But the Iron Fang party still has members out there, and they don't forget grudges. Do-hyun's face tightens with fear. He says his sister's medicine is paid for, but now he's got a target on his back. Jae-won thinks for a long moment, then tells him to lay low with his sister for a few days. He'll handle the rest. The eastern gate squeals shut behind him as the last light drains from the sky. Jae-won walks the trade road alone with his cloak pulled tight. The moon is thin and gives just enough light to see the ruts in the dirt. His body still aches from the ogre fight and the duel and 3 days of running for his life. But he can't stay in Manhwa. Seok-jun's party will regroup, and sooner or later, someone will start asking questions about Jang Min. Questions that lead back to a banishment decree and a family name he isn't ready to claim yet. So he signed up for a night patrol quest on the guild board. Kill the shadow wolves that have been picking off farmstead livestock at the forest's edge. The pay is garbage, but it gets him out of town and back into monster territory. And killing monsters is the only thing that makes him stronger. The forest goes quiet around him. Too quiet. No crickets. No nightbirds. Just the whisper of wind through dead leaves. Jae-won stops walking. His fingers drift to the handle of his rusty knife. Somewhere in the dark ahead of him, a twig snaps. Not an animal's weight, a boot's weight. Jae-won drops to a crouch and presses his back against the trunk of a thick oak. His eyes adjust faster than they used to, and he counts the shapes moving between the trees. 5 of them. 4 men in leather armor carrying short swords and hand axes. And behind them, a woman in dark robes with a staff topped by a flickering red crystal. A mage. At her heel, something moves that isn't human. A hellhound. Shoulder-high, built like a wolf wrapped in black iron, with embers glowing in the cracks of its skin. The same kind of beast Gang Yoo-jin's elite guard used to hunt fugitives. Jae-won's blood goes cold. They didn't track him by accident. This is a kill squad. The lead thug holds up a closed fist, and the group stops 20 meters from Jae-won's tree. He's got a scarred face and a nose that's been broken so many times, it's just a lump of cartilage. He calls out into the dark and tells Jung Min to stop hiding. Jae-won stays silent. Scarface laughs and says they know exactly who he is. The banishment decree hasn't reached Manhwa yet. But Gang Yoo-jin doesn't wait for paperwork. He sent word ahead with a fast horse and a fat purse. 50 gold for the head of the corpse robber, no questions asked. Jae-won's jaw clenches so hard his teeth creak. Gang Yoo-jin already knows he's alive, and he's paying to make sure that changes tonight. The mage raises her staff, and the crystal flares red. The hellhound's nostrils flare, and it turns its massive head directly toward Jae-won's oak. It snorts a burst of smoke and starts growling. Scarface grins and draws his short sword. He says the mutt's got his scent now. Jae-won doesn't wait for them to close the distance. He bolts. The forest explodes behind him. A fire spell slams into the oak he was hiding against and turns it into a torch. The heat washes over his back as he sprints through the undergrowth. The hellhound is faster. It tears through the brush in a blur of black muscle and glowing cinders, closing the gap in seconds. Jae-won vaults a fallen log and lands in a shallow creek. The water is freezing and soaks his boots instantly. The hellhound leaps the log, and its paws hit the wet stones right behind him. Jae-won spins and slashes with the rusty knife. Blade scrapes across the beast's iron-hard hide and barely leaves a scratch. The hellhound's jaws snap shut an inch from his throat. Jae-won throws himself backward into the creek. He lands on his shoulder, and the cold water shocks his already aching ribs. The beast rears up for a killing lunge. Jae-won's free hand closes around a rock the size of his fist. He swings it upward with every ounce of level 15 strength. The rock crunches into the hellhound's exposed eye socket. The beast shrieks and stumbles sideways, pawing at its face with smoke pouring from the wound. Not dead, just blind on one side and furious. Jae-won scrambles to his feet and runs upstream. Behind him, the thugs are crashing through the forest in pursuit. Scarface shouts for the mage to send another volley. The mage chants, and 2 bolts of red mana streak through the trees. One hits the creek behind Jae-won and flash boils the water into steam. The second clips his left arm and the pain is instant, like someone pressed a hot brand against his bicep. Jae-won grits his teeth and doesn't stop running. His arm smokes, and the skin is raw and blistered. But the muscle still works. The creek bends hard to the right and opens into a small rocky clearing. At the center of the clearing is a stone drainage grate, half buried in moss and dead leaves. The sewers of Manhwa. Jae-won skids to a stop and grabs the iron bars. He heaves and the grate groans but doesn't budge. Footsteps pound closer through the trees. The hellhound's one-eyed snarl echoes off the rocks. Jae-won closes his eyes and focuses. The EXP he stole from the ogre and the direwolf is still humming in his blood. A low electric current. He channels every scrap of it into his arms and pulls. The grate tears free with a scream of rusted metal. Black water rushes below. Jae-won doesn't hesitate. He drops. The fall is 4 meters into a tunnel of slick stone and sewage. He lands hard, and his knee buckles, but the cold filth softens the impact. Above him, the 5 killers reach the grate. Scarface peers down, and his face twists with fury. He orders the mage to collapse the tunnel. The mage raises her staff, and red light gathers at the crystal's tip. Jae-won finds his feet and limps into the dark as fast as his body will let him. Behind him, the tunnel entrance erupts in a roar of fire and falling stone. The blast seals the grate and sends a wall of dust and debris chasing him down the passage. He rounds a corner, and the shockwave throws him against the wall. His head rings, his vision blurs, but he's alive. The sewer is a maze of ancient brickwork and slow-moving filth. Jae-won walks until his legs give out. He finds a dry side passage where the ceiling has partially collapsed, creating a small hollow behind a pile of rubble. It's dark and it stinks, but it's defensible. He slumps against the wall and checks his wounds by the faint glow of a phosphorescent fungus growing on the bricks. The mana burn on his arm is already forming a puckered red scar instead of an open wound. His healing is getting faster, but the exhaustion hits him all at once. The ogre kill, the arena fight, the sprint through the forest, the hellhound dodge. Every muscle in his body screams at once. His stomach twists, and he dry heaves into the muck. This is the limit. Level 15, and he still can't fight a prepared squad with a mage and a tracking beast. He's been surviving on luck and stolen power without ever training his body to handle it. That ends tonight. He pulls the rusty knife from his belt and stares at his own reflection in the chipped blade. The face looking back at him is thinner than it was in Hwasong. Harder. Older. But not strong enough to face Gang Yu-jin. Gang Yu-jin has gold and killers, and mages who can track fugitives through the dark. Jae-won has a rusty knife and a body that breaks every time he pushes it past its limits. He needs to change the math. He wipes the blade on his torn sleeve and slides it back into his belt. Then he closes his eyes and lets the sewer's cold seep into his bones. Not to rest, to plan. When Jae-won wakes, the fungus on the walls has dimmed to a faint blue glow, morning somewhere above him. His body still aches, but the sharp edge of exhaustion has dulled into something manageable. He can move. He can think. He can fight. The question is whether that's enough. He tears a strip from his cloak and wraps it tight around his burned arm, then pulls himself upright. The sewer passage stretches in two directions. One leads back toward the collapsed entrance and the kill squad that's probably still combing the forest. The other leads deeper, toward the city's underbelly. Jae-won chooses deeper. If Gang Yu-jin's men are already hunting him by name, then walking the streets of Yeonhwa with a bronze badge is a death sentence. He needs to get stronger off the grid, where no guild clerk is tracking his quests and no bounty hunter is memorizing his face. The sewers run under half the city, and they connect to the catacombs beneath the Eastern District. Old hunting grounds for things that crawled up from the rift before the walls were built. Things that still carry EXP. He moves through the tunnels for hours. The brickwork gets older as he goes, shifting from modern stone to something ancient and crumbling. Phosphorescent fungus gives way to total darkness. Jae-won navigates by touch, one hand on the wall and the other on his knife. After a long stretch of silence, he hears it. Water dripping into a larger chamber, and beneath the drip, the wet sound of something breathing. Jae-won edges forward until the tunnel opens into a vast cistern. The ceiling arches 20 feet overhead, supported by columns of eroded stone. In the center of the cistern, sprawled across a mound of bones and refuse, is a sewer drake. 8 feet of scaled muscle and filth, with blind white eyes and a mouth full of needle teeth. It's young, maybe an adolescent. Its hide is still soft at the joints. It hasn't noticed him yet. Jae-won's grip tightens on the knife. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have backup. He doesn't have a way out if this goes wrong. But he needs the EXP. He needs to know if his body can take another surge without breaking. Only one way to find out. He climbs a pillar where the mortar has crumbled into handholds. The drake stirs when a loose stone clatters but doesn't wake. Jae-won reaches the top of the pillar and balances on the narrow cap. 30 feet below, the drake's ribcage rises and falls with each slow breath. The drop onto the ogre's head taught him that surprise attacks from above work. They also hurt. He adjusts his grip on the knife and takes one last breath. Then he jumps. He doesn't hesitate. The knife drives down hard between two scales at the base of the drake's skull. A wet crunch echoes through the cistern, and the beast convulses. Its tail whips across the water and slams into a stone pillar with a crack that shakes the ceiling. Jae-won hangs on. His knuckles go white around the knife handle as the drake thrashes beneath him. The needle teeth snap at empty air, and the blind white eyes roll back. Then it goes still. The familiar rush hits him like a wave of ice water straight to the spine. Every nerve in his body lights up at once. His muscles seize, and his jaw locks, and for 3 full seconds he can't breathe. Then the system does its work. The drake's EXP floods into him, and the counter ticks up. He hits level 16 before the corpse stops twitching. 17 comes a heartbeat later. His vision whites out for a second, and when it clears, he's on his knees in the muck. The knife is still buried in the drake's neck, and his hands are shaking like leaves. But he's standing again in under a minute. That's faster than the ogre put him down. His body is learning. He pulls the knife free and wipes it on the drake's hump. The scales are already cooling, and the blind eyes stare at nothing. No time to harvest anything useful. The kill squad might have heard the thrashing, and he's not about to stick around. He climbs out of the cistern through a crack in the eastern wall. The passage beyond is narrow and dry, and smells faintly of old smoke. Someone lived down here once, maybe squatters or refugees from the last big rift breach. He follows the passage for 20 minutes until it opens into a larger junction chamber with 4 tunnel mouths branching off. One is collapsed. One is flooded with black water that stinks of rot. The third has fresh scratches on the walls and the faint sound of breathing somewhere deep inside. He takes the fourth. That one slopes upward, and the brickwork is newer. Blue Guild survey marks are chiseled into the stone every 50 feet. The catacombs are mapped this far. He follows the survey marks for another hour until a grate appears overhead. Sunlight cuts through the bars in thin, dusty shafts, and he can hear footsteps and cartwheels above. Jae-won climbs the rusted ladder and peers through the grate. He's in the Eastern District. The street above is quiet. A few merchants and a stray dog, and the smell of bread from a nearby bakery. No guards in sight. He pushes the grate open and hauls himself out into an alley between 2 old stone buildings. The sunlight hits his face, and he has to squint until his eyes adjust. He's been underground for nearly a full day. His clothes are stiff with dried sewer filth, and his left arm throbs under the bandage. He needs food, and he needs information. And he needs to find Do-hyun before Ironfang does. But first, he needs to not look like a corpse that crawled out of a grave. He finds a public well 2 streets over. 3 silver to the old woman who runs it, buys him a bucket of cold water and a scrap of rough soap. He scrubs the filth off his arms and face and neck right there in the alley. The bandage comes off, and the mana burn underneath has already faded to a thin silver scar. His healing really is getting faster. He wraps a fresh strip of cloth around it, and pulls his cloak tight and heads toward the guild quarter. The streets get busier as he walks. Adventurers in leather and chainmail, and the occasional flash of mage robes. Merchants hawking potions and charms, and dubious maps of unmapped dungeons. Nobody looks twice at Jae-won. He's just another bronze rank with a dirty cloak and a chip on his shoulder. He finds Do-hyun in the market square near the herbalist stalls. The kid is haggling with a vendor over a bundle of dried moonleaf. His new leather armor is scuffed at the knees, and there's a bruise on his jaw that wasn't there 2 days ago. Jae-won grabs his shoulder and pulls him into a side street. Do-hyun almost drops the moonleaf, and his hand goes to his sword before he recognizes who's grabbing him. He asks where Jae-won has been. His voice cracks in the middle. Jae-won tells him about the ambush and the hellhound and the kill squad. Do-hyun's face goes pale. He says Ironfang put the word out last night. 50 gold for Jang-min dead or alive. The bounty specifies the eastern gate and the sewer entrance. They know he went underground. Jae-won curses under his breath. 50 gold is enough to turn every debt-ridden adventurer in Yeonhwa into a hunter. He can't take quests from the board anymore, and he can't use his bronze badge without someone recognizing the alias. Do-hyun says he might have a way around that. He pulls a folded square of parchment from inside his tunic. The paper is old and yellowed, and the edges are scorched. He says his grandfather gave it to him before he died. It's a map to a hidden dungeon about half a day east of Yeonhwa. Not a rift dungeon, something older. Pre-kingdom ruins that got swallowed by the forest before anyone could properly map them. His grandfather always said there was something valuable inside, but he was never strong enough to clear it. Do-hyun opens the map, and Jae-won leans in. The ink is faded, but the markings are clear. 3 chambers marked in old script. The first one says, Trial of Roots. The second says, Chamber of the Verdant Heart. The third is smudged beyond reading. Jae-won asks what the Verdant Heart is. Do-hyun shrugs and says his grandfather never made it past the first chamber. Whatever's inside has been sitting untouched for decades. And if it's off the guild maps, then nobody's tracking quests there. No clerks and no bounty hunters, and no Iron Fang patrols. Just whatever monsters have nested in the ruins since Do-hyun's grandfather walked them. Jae-won stares at the map for a long moment. His body still aches from the Drake kill, and his stomach is eating itself from hunger. But the math is simple. He needs EXP, and he can't get it through the guild. This dungeon is the only play left. He folds the map and tucks it into his belt and tells Do-hyun to buy supplies. Food and water and torches and rope. Bandages too. Do-hyun nods, and his eyes get a little brighter. He's been sitting in town for 2 days, watching the bounty hunters circle and waiting for Jae-won to crawl out of the sewer, dead or alive. Having a plan again puts steel back in his spine. They meet at the eastern gate an hour later. The same guard who let Jae-won through 3 days ago doesn't even glance at his badge this time. The afternoon sun is high, and the road east is quiet. They walk in silence until the town is a smudge on the horizon behind them. The forest gets thicker as they go. The surveyor paths end, and Do-hyun navigates by the map and by landmarks his grandfather described. A split oak struck by lightning. A stream that runs green with mineral runoff. A boulder that looks like a sleeping bear if you squint. The landmarks are decades old, but most of them are still there. The split oak has grown a second trunk. The stream still runs green. The bare boulder is half swallowed by moss, but still recognizable. By late afternoon, they reach a section of forest where the trees grow twisted and strange. The bark is darker here, and the leaves are a shade of green that hurts to look at. Do-hyun says they're close. The dungeon entrance is hidden at the base of a cliff, where 3 old oaks grow in a circle. They find the cliff and the oaks and the entrance right where the map says. A narrow crack in the stone, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The air coming out of it is cold and smells of wet earth and something else. Something old and alive. Jae-won lights a torch and goes in first. The crack opens into a passage that slopes downward at a sharp angle. The walls are carved with symbols that don't match any kingdom script Jae-won has seen. Geometric patterns and spirals and images of trees with roots that stretch into the stone itself. Do-hyun touches one of the carvings and whispers that his grandfather was right. This place is older than the guild and older than the kingdom, maybe older than the rifts. They follow the passage for 200 feet before it opens into the first chamber. The Trial of Roots, and it's bigger than anything the map suggested. The ceiling arches 40 feet overhead, and the walls are covered in a lattice of ancient roots thicker than Jae-won's torso. At the center of the chamber stands a single massive vine. It's coiled around itself like a sleeping serpent, and its surface pulses with a faint green glow. The glow is the only light in the chamber besides Jae-won's torch. As soon as they step inside, the roots on the walls start to move, slow at first, then faster. Jae-won draws his knife. Do-hyun draws his sword, and his hands are shaking but his stance is solid. The central vine unfurls. It rises 20 feet into the air, and a mouth opens at its tip. No teeth. No roar. Just a low hum that vibrates through the stone and into their bones. Jae-won feels the hum in his teeth. The vine lunges. He dives left, and the tip slams into the stone where he was standing. The impact cracks the floor. Do-hyun charges in from the side and swings his sword at the vine's base. The blade bites into the pulsing green flesh, and a spray of sap hits him in the face. The vine shrieks. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's a pressure in the skull and a spike of pain behind the eyes. Do-hyun staggers, and the vine whips around and catches him across the chest. He flies backward and smashes into the wall of roots. The smaller roots immediately coil around his arms and legs. He's pinned. Jae-won doesn't stop to think. He sprints up the vine's own body. His boots find purchase on the rough bark, and he climbs like he climbed the pillar in the cistern. The vine twists and bucks, but he's already at the top. The mouth opens beneath him, and the hum intensifies until his vision vibrates. He doesn't give it time to scream again. He drives the rusty knife into the vine's core, where the glow is brightest. The knife sinks to the hilt. Hum cuts out. The vine convulses once, and then crashes to the floor. The roots pinning Do-hyun go slack. The EXP hits Jae-won like a freight wagon. His legs buckle, and he slides off the dying vine and hits the stone hard. The counter ticks. His heart pounds so fast he thinks it might crack his ribs. His vision swims, and his fingers curl into claws against the stone. But he doesn't pass out. The strain is brutal, but his body holds. He pushes himself up onto his hands and knees and spits blood. Do-hyun pulls himself free from the dead roots and stares at the collapsed vine. Then at Jae-won. He asks if Jae-won just leveled up 3 times in 1 kill. Jae-won doesn't answer. He's too busy breathing. The vine's corpse is already crumbling into gray ash. Whatever powered it is gone now. But the chamber isn't finished with them yet. A door opens at the far end of the chamber, where no door was visible before. It slides open like stone on oiled rails and reveals a second passage. The passage glows with the same green light that pulsed through the vine. Jae-won gets to his feet and picks up his knife. The blade is clean. The vine's sap evaporated off the metal like it was never there. He looks at Do-hyun and nods. 1 chamber down, 2 to go. They step into the glowing passage together. The walls here are smooth, and the carvings are more intricate. Trees with roots that become rivers, and rivers that become stars. The deeper they go, the older the art gets. The passage opens into the second chamber, the chamber of the verdant heart. And it's not what either of them expected. The room is small, circular, maybe 20 feet across. At its center floats a core of pure green light. It pulses slowly like a heartbeat, and the entire chamber pulses with it. The walls and floor and ceiling all throb in rhythm. Jae-won can feel the pulse in his chest. His own heartbeat is syncing up with it. Do-hyun takes a step forward, and Jae-won grabs his arm. Something's wrong. The core is too exposed, too easy. A dungeon doesn't just hand you its heart without a fight. The moment he thinks it, the fight arrives. The floor cracks open and a figure rises from the stone itself. A guardian. Humanoid, but not human. Its body is woven from vines and bark and pulsing green light. It has no face, but Jae-won knows it's looking at them. It raises one arm, and the roots in the walls tear free and lash toward the intruders. Do-hyun shouts and throws himself in front of Jae-won. His sword slices through two of the roots before a third wraps around his wrist and yanks him off his feet. The guardian advances. Jae-won lunges for the core. The guardian is faster. A wall of roots erupts between Jae-won and the floating heart. He slashes through one layer, and two more grow back. Do-hyun screams something from behind him. Jae-won can't hear the words over the pulse hammering in his skull. But he understands the choice. Fight the guardian or reach the core. He can't do both. Not alone. He yells back and tells Do-hyun to buy him 10 seconds. Do-hyun doesn't hesitate. He rips his arm free from the root and charges the guardian with a scream that's half terror and half fury. The guardian turns to meet him. Jae-won hacks through the root wall. One layer. The rusty knife is glowing now. The same green light that pulses from the core is bleeding into the blade. The knife is drinking it. He reaches the core just as Do-hyun's sword shatters against the guardian's chest. The guardian's arm spears through Do-hyun's shoulder. Do-hyun screams. Jae-won grabs the core with both hands. The green light floods into him. It's not like absorbing a monster. This is older and deeper, and it doesn't ask permission. It pours through his arms and into his chest and into his bones and into the spaces between his thoughts. His absorption capacity doubles. He feels it happen, feels the ceiling of his power crack and expand like ice breaking on a river. The guardian freezes mid-strike. Its body crumbles into dust and dry leaves, and the roots in the walls go still. The core dims and shrinks and fuses into Jae-won's palms. When the light fades, there are two thin green lines etched into his skin. They pulse once and then go dark. Jae-won drops to his knees. Do-hyun is on the floor 10 feet away with a hole through his shoulder. Blood pools under him, and his face is gray. But he's breathing. Jae-won crawls to him and presses a bandage against the wound. The bleeding slows. The healing isn't magic, but it's enough to keep him alive until they can get out. The chamber groans around them. The core was holding the place together, and now it's gone. Cracks spider across the walls, and dust rains from the ceiling. Jae-won hauls Do-hyun upright and drapes him over his shoulder. The map said there's a third chamber, but that door stays closed. Whatever's behind it can wait. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting out before the whole ruin collapses on their heads. He staggers back through the glowing passage and into the first chamber. The dead vine's ash is already buried under fallen stone. The exit crack is ahead, and daylight cuts through the dust like a blade. He pushes through the crack just as the ceiling behind him gives way. The rumble shakes the forest, and birds explode from the canopy. Jae-won drops Do-hyun in the grass and collapses beside him. The green lines on his palms are glowing again, soft and steady, like a second heartbeat. Do-hyun coughs and opens his eyes and asks if they won. Jae-won looks at his hands and feels the doubled capacity humming under his skin. He says they did more than win. They just changed the math. He doesn't remember falling. One moment, the sky is still there, bright and blue through the dust. The next moment, it's gone, and everything is dark and heavy. Do-hyun is shaking him, and his voice sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a well. Our boy opens his eyes, and the light stabs straight into his skull. Every muscle in his body is screaming. The green lines on his palms are still pulsing, and his veins feel like they've been filled with liquid fire. He tries to sit up, and his arms don't cooperate. Do-hyun tells him to stop moving, and his voice cracks like he's been yelling for a while. The hole in Do-hyun's shoulder is still bleeding through the bandage, but he's the one doing the shaking. Guess what happens when you double your absorption capacity in one shot? Your body treats it like getting hit by a wagon, and then the wagon backs up and hits you again. Jae-won manages to roll onto his side, and the world spins for a solid 10 seconds. The grass under his cheek is cold and wet with dew. They've been out here for hours. The sun is lower now, and the shadows from the 3 oaks stretch across the clearing like long black fingers. Do-hyun asks if he can walk. Jae-won laughs, and it sounds terrible and raw and half-dead. He says walking is probably not on the menu right now. Do-hyun says that's fine because he can't carry anyone with a hole through his shoulder either. They're both a mess, and the dungeon entrance behind them is a collapsed pile of stone and dust and dead silence. Whatever was in the 3rd chamber is buried now, and it's going to stay buried until someone with a lot more muscle dig it out. Jae-won forces himself upright, and the green lines on his palms flare once, and then settle. The hum under his skin is still there, but it's quieter now, and less like a scream, and more like a purr. He checks his level, and the number catches in his throat. Level 20. Vine Boss and the Verdant Heart Core together pumped 5 full levels into him, and his body is only now catching up to the math. Do-hyun sees his face and asks what's wrong. Jae-won tells him, and Do-hyun's jaw hangs open for a good 3 seconds. Then he says that's insane, and starts laughing and then winces because laughing with a hole in your shoulder is a bad idea. They sit there in the grass for another hour while Jae-won's accelerated healing does its work. The fatigue doesn't vanish, but it eases enough that he can stand without his knees buckling. Do-hyun watches him get up and says something about how unfair it is that the guy who collapsed is healing faster than the guy who didn't. Jae-won tells him to shut up and save his strength. They start walking. It's slow going, and Do-hyun leans on Jae-won more than either of them wants to admit. The forest is quiet now that the dungeon's pulse has stopped, and the birds are starting to come back. Every step jolts Do-hyun's shoulder, and every jolt makes him hiss through his teeth, but he doesn't complain. Kid's got more grit than Jae-won expected, and that's worth remembering. By the time they reach the eastern road, the sun has dipped below the tree line. The gates of Yeonhwa are visible in the distance, and the torches along the wall are already lit. Jae-won stops at the tree line, and Do-hyun asks why they're stopping. Our boy points at the guards at the gate, 2 of them, and they're checking faces tonight. That's new, and it's not good. Do-hyun says maybe they're just being thorough. Jae-won says maybe, or maybe the Iron Fang bounty finally made it to the gatehouse. He pulls his hood lower and tells Do-hyun to let him do the talking. They approach the gate, and the guard on the left holds up a hand. He asks for their guild cards, and Jae-won slides his bronze badge out of his pouch. The guard squints at it, and then squints at Jae-won's face, and then squints at the blood on Do-hyun's shoulder. He asks what happened to them. Jae-won says they took a quest in the eastern woods and ran into something bigger than expected. The guard asks what kind of something. Jae-won says a dire boar, and the guard's eyes widen a little. Dire boars are bad news, and nobody wants to ask too many questions about a hunt that went sideways. The guard waves them through, and Jae-won doesn't let himself exhale until they're 50 feet past the gate. Do-hyun whispers that was too close. Jae-won doesn't answer because he's already scanning the street ahead and noting every face in the torchlight. They make it to the inn, and the innkeeper takes one look at Do-hyun's shoulder and starts yelling for hot water and clean cloth. Jae-won drops Do-hyun onto a bench, and the innkeeper's wife comes running with a roll of bandages. The next hour is a blur of stitching and poultices, and Do-hyun biting down on a leather strip to keep from screaming. When it's done, the innkeeper tells Jae-won the room is paid for 3 more nights. Jae-won doesn't remember paying for 3 nights. The innkeeper says a courier came by earlier and left a message and the payment. Jae-won's blood goes cold. He asks what kind of courier. The innkeeper shrugs and says, just a kid with a sealed letter and a small purse. He hands Jae-won the letter, and the seal is plain wax with no mark. Jae-won opens it right there in the common room. The letter is short, and written in a hand he doesn't recognize, and it says only that Gang Yoo-jin is coming to Yeonhwa, and he'll arrive in 4 days. No signature and no explanation and no threat. Just the fact. Jae-won reads it twice, and then burns it in the candle on the table. The innkeeper pretends not to notice. Do-hyun is passed out on the bench, and Jae-won carries him up to the room and lays him on the bed. Then he sits in the dark with his back against the door and lets the green lines on his palms glow soft and steady. 4 days. Gang Yoo-jin is coming to this town, and Jae-won is level 20 and nowhere near strong enough to face him. But leaving isn't an option because the man who destroyed his life is finally within reach, and Jae-won needs to know why. He needs to know what's buried under his family's land. He needs to know the truth about the monarch's heart. Dawn comes too fast, and Jae-won hasn't slept. Do-hyun wakes up groggy and feverish, and Jae-won checks his bandage and changes it and tells him to stay in the room. Do-hyun asks where he's going. Chae-won says he's going to the archives. The town archives are in a squat stone building behind the guild hall, and they're open to anyone with a bronze badge or higher. Chae-won walks in like he belongs there, and the old clerk at the front desk barely looks up. He asks what Chae-won is looking for. Chae-won says land records, and the clerk points at the second floor and goes back to his ledger. The archive is dusty and dark and smells like old paper and mouse droppings. Chae-won spends 2 hours digging through shelves of property deeds and tax rolls and boundary maps. His family's land is listed under his father's name, and the deed is stamped with a transfer order dated 3 days after Jae-won's banishment. The transfer goes to a holding company called the Viridian Trust. Chae-won has never heard of it, but he knows exactly who's behind it. He keeps digging and finds a surveyor's report attached to the transfer. The report is technical and dry, but one phrase stops him cold. Monarch's heart identified at depth 30 meters and estimated value incalculable. Gang Yoo-jin didn't banish him because he was weak. He banished him to steal what was buried under his home. Chae-won copies the surveyor's map onto a scrap of paper and folds it into his pouch. Then he finds a second document that makes his stomach drop even further. It's a letter from Gang Yoo-jin to the surveyor, and it's dated 6 months before the banishment. The letter authorizes a secret excavation and mentions that the current landowner must be removed before work can begin. The current landowner was Jae-won's father. Gang Yoo-jin had been planning this for half a year, and Jae-won's banishment was just the final move in a game he didn't even know he was playing. He clenches the paper so hard it tears, and the green lines on his palms flare bright enough to cast shadows on the walls. The clerk downstairs calls up and asks if everything is all right. Chae-won says everything is fine, and his voice is steady, but his hands are shaking. He puts the documents back where he found them, and walks out of the archives with the copied map burning a hole in his pouch. The street outside is busy, and nobody looks at him twice. He blends in because that's what he's good at now, and he's been invisible since the day they stripped his rank. But invisibility isn't enough anymore. He needs to know what the monarch's heart actually is, and he needs to know it before Gang Yoo-jin arrives. There's only one place in Yeonhwa that might have that information: the old temple at the edge of town, and nobody goes there anymore because the rift that opened in the basement 20 years ago killed 3 priests and forced the place to be sealed. But sealed doesn't mean empty, and Chae-won is done letting locked doors stop him. He waits until nightfall and then slips through the back alleys to the temple's side entrance. The door is chained shut, and the chain is rusted but still thick. Chae-won wraps his hands around the lock and channels stolen EXP into his grip, and the metal groans and snaps. The chain falls to the ground, and the sound is too loud in the quiet alley. He freezes and counts to 30, and nobody comes. Then he pushes the door open and steps into the dark. The town crier's bell cuts through the morning noise like a knife. Chae-won is halfway across the market square when the announcement hits. A tournament, and every adventurer in Yeonhwa is already shoving toward the guild hall to sign up. The prize is a private audience with the visiting noble from Hwasong, Gang Yoo-jin. Chae-won stops dead in the middle of the street, and a cart driver curses at him, and he doesn't even hear it. This is the opening he didn't know he needed, and it drops into his lap like a gift from the Rift Gods. The tournament is in 3 days, and the rules are simple. Single elimination, and any registered adventurer with a bronze badge or higher can enter. Monsters are permitted as summoned combatants, and the guild provides the arena and the beasts. Chae-won's mind is already running the numbers before the crier finishes his second loop. He can't walk up to Gang Yoo-jin as Jang-min because his face is known to anyone who served in Hwasong. But a tournament means crowds and masks and chaos, and that's exactly where he thrives. He turns on his heel and walks straight to the guild hall. The line is already out the door, and every fighter in town is shoving to get their name on the bracket. Chae-won finds Do-hyun slumped on a bench outside with fresh bandages and a tired grin. Do-hyun asks if he heard the announcement. Chae-won says he's entering. Do-hyun's grin vanishes, and he grabs Chae-won's sleeve and tells him that's insane. The whole reason Jae-won is hiding under a false name is to avoid Gang Yoo-jin, and now he wants to fight in his honor. Chae-won tells him he's not fighting in anyone's honor, and he's fighting to get close enough to see the man's face. Do-hyun asks what happens after that. Chae-won doesn't answer, and that silence says more than any words could. They join the line, and Jae-won registers under the name Jang-min, and the clerk stamps his entry without a second glance. The bracket is posted the next morning, and 64 names are carved into a wooden board in the guild hall. Chae-won is seated 47th, and his first opponent is a level 22 swordsman named Choi Moon-soo. Do-hyun reads the name, and his face goes pale, and he says Moon-soo is known for breaking bones in the qualifiers. Chae-won asks if Moon-soo uses monsters. Do-hyun says no, and he's a pure blade fighter. And that's exactly the problem. Jae-won just nods and walks to the market to buy a mask. He finds a leather worker in the Eastern District who sells him a half mask that covers his nose and mouth and leaves only his eyes visible. It's plain brown leather, and it smells like dye and sweat, and it's perfect. The first round is held in the guild arena, and the stands are packed with townsfolk and merchants and off-duty guards. Jae-won stands in the tunnel under the stands, and the noise above him is a living thing, and his heart is hammering against his rib. The green lines on his palms pulse once, and then steady, and he pulls the mask over his face and steps into the light. Choi Moon-soo is already in the arena, and he's exactly what Do-hyun described. Tall and broad with a longsword that's seen serious use, and his stance says he's been doing this for years. The match starts and Moon-soo charges, and his blade comes down in a vertical slash that would split a normal man in half. Chaewon sidesteps and the sword bites into the sand, and Moon-soo is already swinging again, and his follow-up is a horizontal cut aimed at Chaewon's throat. Chaewon ducks, and the blade whistles over his head, and the crowd roars, and Moon-soo grins like he's already won. He has no idea what Chaewon is. Chaewon lets him swing 3 more times, and each dodge is tighter than the last, and Moon-soo's breathing is getting heavy. Then Jae-won moves, and it's not a dodge, and it's a counter, and his fist drives into Moon-soo's ribs right where the leather armor gap. Moon-soo grunts and stumbles, and Jae-won follows with a kick to the knee that drops him to the sand. The swordsman tries to rise, and Jae-won is already behind him with a hand on his collar and a knee in his spine. The referee calls the match, and the crowd goes quiet, because they didn't see a level 20 fight like that before. Chaewon walks out of the arena without a scratch, and Do-hyun meets him in the tunnel with his mouth hanging open. Round 2 is an hour later, and the bracket throws Jae-won against a level 25 beast tamer named Yoon Se-ri. She walks into the arena with 2 shadow panthers on iron chains, and their eyes are black pits, and their claws leave scorch marks in the sand. The rules say summoned creatures are legal, and Se-ri doesn't even draw her weapon, and she just smiles and drops the chains. Both panthers launch at Jae-won at the same time, and they're fast and silent, and they don't make a sound until they're already in the air. Jae-won doesn't dodge, and he doesn't run, and he meets the first panther head-on with his bare hands. His fingers close around its throat, and the contact is instant, and the stolen EXP floods into him like a river breaking a dam. The panther convulses, and its shadowy body flickers, and then it dissolves into black smoke and the crowd gasps. The second panther lands on his back, and its claws rake across his shoulder, and the pain is sharp and hot. Chaewon reaches over his head and grabs it by the scruff and slams it into the sand, and the EXP drains out of it in a single pulse. Both creatures are gone, and Se-ri is staring at him with her weapon half drawn, and her face is pure shock. The referee calls the match, and the crowd doesn't even cheer at first, and they're just trying to understand what they saw. Chaewon walks out, and his shoulder is bleeding, but the wounds are already closing, and Do-hyun is waiting with bandages and a look of pure disbelief. He asks how Jae-won did that. Chaewon says he got lucky. Do-hyun doesn't believe him for a second. Round 3 is the next morning, and the bracket has narrowed to 16 fighters, and Jae-won's opponent is a level 31 mage named Park Jin-ho. Jin-ho is known for fire magic, and he's burned 3 opponents already, and the guild healers are keeping a bed ready just for his matches. The arena is set with stone barriers for cover, and Jae-won stands behind one and watches Jin-ho charge his first spell. A fireball the size of a wagon wheel roars across the sand, and it hits the barrier, and the stone cracks and glows red. Chaewon doesn't wait for the second one. He sprints across the open ground, and Jin-ho tracks him and fires again, and the second fireball clips his heel, and the heat is immediate and brutal. The leather of his boots smokes, and his skin blisters, and he doesn't stop. He reaches Jin-ho before the third spell finishes, and his hand closes around the mage's staff, and he channels stolen EXP into his grip. The staff's red crystal flickers and dims, and Jin-ho's spell fizzles and dies in his hand. Chaewon pulls the staff away, and Jin-ho stumbles forward, and Chaewon drives his shoulder into the mage's chest and sends him sprawling. The referee calls the match, and Jin-ho is on the ground gasping, and the crowd is on its feet. Chaewon's boot is a mess of burned leather and blistered skin, and he limps out of the arena, and Do-hyun is there with a bucket of cold water. He asks if Jae-won can even walk to the next round. Jae-won says he'll crawl if he has to. The semifinals are that afternoon, and the guild brings out the monsters. A cage is wheeled into the arena, and inside is a stone-hide basilisk, and it's 12 feet of armored muscle, and its eyes are covered with a leather blindfold. The rules change for the semifinals, and each fighter has to face a captured monster, and the one who kills it fastest advances. Jae-won's opponent goes first, and he's a level 38 axeman named Kang Dae-ho. Dae-ho swings his axe, and it bounces off the basilisk's hide, and the monster swipes with its tail and breaks his leg in 2 places. The match is called, and Dae-ho is carried out on a stretcher, and now it's Jae-won's turn. He walks into the arena, and the basilisk's blindfold is still on, and the crowd is dead silent. The handler pulls the cord, and the blindfold drops, and the basilisk's eyes are yellow slits, and they lock onto Jae-won instantly. It charges and the ground shakes, and Jae-won runs straight at it. He doesn't have a weapon, and he doesn't need one. And his whole body is screaming from the burns and the cuts and the accumulated fatigue of 3 rounds of fighting. But his hands are glowing green, and the lines on his palms are bright enough to cast shadows, and he meets the basilisk head-on. His palm slams into the creature's snout, and the contact is electric, and the EXP drain hits like a thunderclap. The basilisk shudders, and its charge falters, and Jae-won climbs onto its head and presses both hands flat against its skull. The drain is massive, and the creature's strength pours into him, and the level-ups hit in rapid succession, and his body screams in protest. His muscles tear, and his vision whites out for a heartbeat, and he doesn't let go. The basilisk collapses, and Jae-won rides it down, and his hands are still pressed to its skull when it hits the sand. It's dead before the dust settles, and the crowd erupts. Jae-won stands up, and his legs are shaking, and blood is running from his nose, and he's never been this close to his limit. He walks out of the arena, and Do-hyun catches him before he falls, and they stagger into the tunnel together. The final match is in 1 hour, and Jae-won's opponent is a level 50 knight named Heo Jae-won. Do-hyun tells him to forfeit and says he's already proved whatever he needed to prove. Jae-won asks if he looks like a man who forfeits. Do-hyun says he looks like a man who can't stand up. Jae-won pushes himself off the wall, and his legs hold, and the green lines on his palms flare bright and steady. He says he doesn't need to stand, and he just needs to last long enough to win. The finals are held in the main arena, and the stands are packed to bursting, and a private box overlooks the sand. Gang Yoo-jin is in that box. Jae-won can't see him from the tunnel, but he knows he's there, and that knowledge burns hotter than any fire spell. He pulls his mask tight and checks the straps, and steps onto the sand. So Tae-ryong is everything a level 50 knight should be, and he wears plate armor etched with enchantment runes, and his sword is a masterwork, blade that hums with stored mana. He doesn't look at Jae-won like an opponent, and he looks at him like an obstacle to be removed. And that's fine. The match starts, and Tae-ryong raises his sword, and a summoning circle flares on the sand beside it. A creature tears its way out of the rift, and it's a 6-legged ironhide drake, and it's bigger than the basilisk, and its scales gleam like polished steel. The knight didn't bring a monster to fight alongside him, and he brought a monster to end the fight before it begins. Tae-ryong mounts the drake, and they charge, and the combined weight is a small earthquake. Jae-won doesn't try to dodge, and he doesn't try to run, and he waits until the drake is 10 feet away. Then he moves, and he doesn't go for the knight, and he doesn't go for the drake's head, and he drops and slides under the creature's belly. His hands press against the softer scales underneath, and the EXP drain activates, and the drake screams. Tae-ryong slashes down with his sword, and the blade cuts across Jae-won's back, and the pain is white-hot and immediate. Jae-won doesn't let go, and the drake's strength pours into him, and the level-ups hit, and his back is on fire, and his hands are locked onto the creature like iron clamps. The drake collapses, and Tae-ryong is thrown from the saddle, and he lands hard, and his sword skitters across the sand. Jae-won stands up, and his back is a sheet of blood, and his mask is torn, and half his face is visible. Tae-ryong looks at him, and his eyes widen, and he says a name that isn't Jang-min. He says, Heo Jae-won. The private box goes silent, and a figure stands up and looks down at the arena. Gang Yoo-jin's eyes lock onto Jae-won's face, and a slow smile spreads across his lips. He doesn't call for guards, and he doesn't shout, and he just watches. Jae-won stares back at him across the length of the arena, and the green lines on his palms blaze like twin suns. The tournament is over, and the mask is gone. And every lie he told to stay hidden just burned to ash in front of the one man he came here to face. Gang Yoo-jin raises a hand and beckons. The guards at the edge of the arena start moving toward the sand, and Jae-won doesn't run. He's level 24 now, and his back is still bleeding, and his body is held together by adrenaline and stolen experience. But he walks toward the private box anyway, and he doesn't look away from Gang Yoo-jin's eyes. The crowd doesn't understand what's happening, and the announcer is frozen with his mouth open. Tae-ryong is still on the ground, staring at the boy who just drained his drake into a corpse. And Gang Yoo-jin's smile doesn't fade as he watches the son of the man he destroyed walk toward him with nothing left to hide behind. Guards are moving in fast from both sides of the arena, and Jae-won just stands there. The blood is still wet on his back, and his legs are screaming, but he doesn't flinch. Gang Yoo-jin's hand stays raised, and that smile doesn't budge an inch. The announcer finally finds his voice and stammers something about the match being over. Nobody in the crowd knows what they just watched, but they know something is very wrong. Tae-ryong is still on the sand, staring at his dead drake with his mouth hanging open. Two guards reach Jae-won first and grab his arms, and he lets them. He doesn't have the strength to fight, and he doesn't need to. He's exactly where he wants to be. They march him past the cages and through a stone corridor and up a flight of stairs. Every step sends fire through his back, but his face stays blank. The green lines on his palms dim to a faint glow, and his breathing steadies. He's been running and hiding for days, and now he's walking straight into the lion's mouth. The guards stop at a heavy oak door with iron bands, and one of them knocks twice. A voice from inside says to enter, and it's calm and smooth, like silk over a blade. The door swings open, and the room beyond is small and lit by a single mage light floating near the ceiling. Gang Yoo-jin sits in a high-backed chair with a glass of wine in one hand and his other hand resting on his knee. Two more guards stand against the wall, and a mage with a red staff waits near the window. The nobleman looks exactly the same as he did in Hwasong, and that's what makes Chae-won's blood boil. He hasn't aged a day, and he hasn't lost a single ounce of his arrogance. Gang Yoo-jin takes a sip of wine and gestures at the chair across from him. Chae-won doesn't sit. The guards shove him forward, and he stumbles and catches himself on the edge of the table. Gang Yoo-jin says he's impressed, and that he didn't expect the son of a disgraced merchant to make it this far. Chae-won says nothing, and his eyes don't leave the nobleman's face. Gang Yoo-jin asks if he knows why he was really banished. Chae-won says he knows about the monarch's heart, and the land, and the surveyor. The nobleman's smile flickers for half a second, and then it's back, and wider than before. He says Jae-won is smarter than his father, and that's why he's going to make him an offer. The offer is simple, and it's the kind of deal a snake offers a mouse. Gang Yoo-jin says Jae-won can walk away right now with his life, and enough gold to start over in another kingdom. All he has to do is sign a document swearing he'll never speak of the monarch's heart or return to Hwasong. Jae-won asks what happens if he refuses. Gang Yoo-jin's smile turns cold, and he says the alternative is much less pleasant. The guards shift their weight, and the mage's staff glows faintly red. Jae-won looks at the document on the table, and then he looks back at Gang Yoo-jin. He says he has a counteroffer. Gang Yoo-jin raises an eyebrow and tells him to speak. Jae-won says he wants his land back, and a public admission that his father was innocent, and a full revocation of the banishment decree. The room goes dead silent, and even the mage stops breathing for a beat. Then Gang Yoo-jin laughs, and it's not a warm laugh, and it's not a surprised laugh. It's the laugh of a man who just watched someone walk into a trap and not even realize the jaws are closing. He says Jae-won is brave, and that bravery is a useful quality in a corpse. The nobleman snaps his fingers, and the door behind Jae-won slams open. Do-hyun is dragged into the room by two more guards, and his face is bruised, and his shoulder wound is bleeding through the bandages. Chae-won's composure cracks, and his hands clench into fists. Gang Yoo-jin says he wondered how long it would take for the boy to react. He says he had his men pick up Do-hyun the moment Jae-won's mask came off in the arena. Do-hyun looks at Jae-won, and his eyes are swollen, but he's still conscious, and he's still fighting. He tells Jae-won not to sign anything and not to give the bastard a single inch. One of the guards punches him in the stomach and he doubles over. Jae-won lunges forward, and the mage's staff flares, and a bolt of red energy slams into his chest. The pain is instant and brutal, and it throws him back against the wall. His vision swims, and his lungs feel like they're full of broken glass. Gang Yoo-jin stands up and walks over to Do-hyun and draws a slim dagger from his belt. He says he's going to ask Jae-won one more time to sign the document. And if he refuses again, the dagger goes into Do-hyun's throat. Jae-won pushes himself up and his legs are shaking, and blood is dripping from his nose again. He looks at Do-hyun, and Do-hyun shakes his head and mouths the word no. Jae-won walks to the table and picks up the quill. Gang Yoo-jin smiles and lowers the dagger. Jae-won dips the quill in the ink and brings it to the document. Then he stabs the quill into Gang Yoo-jin's hand. The nobleman screams, and the dagger clatters to the floor, and Jae-won grabs Do-hyun by the collar and hauls him toward the window. The mage fires another bolt, and it misses and blows a hole in the wall. Jae-won throws his shoulder into the window, and the shutters explode outward, and cold night air floods the room. He drags Do-hyun through the opening, and they fall 2 stories and hit the roof of a lower building hard. Do-hyun is groaning, and Chae-won's back is a sheet of fresh blood. But they're alive, and they're moving. Shouts erupt from the window above, and guards pour out of the building like ants from a kicked nest. Chae-won pulls Do-hyun to his feet, and they run across the rooftops, and the tiles are slick with rain. Do-hyun is slowing down, and his face is pale, and his bandages are soaked through. He says he can't keep up and tells Jae-won to leave him. Chae-won says he's not leaving anyone, and he hoists Do-hyun onto his shoulders. He leaps to the next building, and the gap is wide and his legs barely make it. The guards are spreading out through the streets below, and torches are flaring to life all over the district. Chae-won drops into an alley and carries Do-hyun through the maze of backstreets, and his body is running on nothing but adrenaline and rage. He finds a crumbling stone shed near the eastern wall and kicks the door open, and lays Do-hyun down on the dirt floor. Do-hyun's breathing is shallow, and his skin is cold, and the blood won't stop. Chae-won presses his hands against the wound and tells him to hold on. Do-hyun grabs his wrist, and his grip is weak, and his voice is barely a whisper. He says he knew what he was signing up for when he followed Jae-won into that first forest. He says he doesn't regret a single moment of it. Do-hyun laughs, and it turns into a cough, and blood bubbles on his lips. He says his grandfather was right about the dungeon, and he's glad someone got to see what was inside. His grip loosens, and his eyes go still. And the green lines on Jae-won's palms flare one last time. There's nothing to absorb and nothing to drain, and the power just flickers and dies. Chae-won sits there in the dark with Do-hyun's body, and the rain starts falling harder outside. He doesn't cry and he doesn't scream, and he just stares at the wall for a long time. The torchlight from the search parties moves past the alley twice, but no one checks the shed. When the sky starts to lighten, Jae-won picks up Do-hyun's body and carries him out through a gap in the eastern wall. The forest is silent, and the rain has stopped, and the ground is soft from the storm. He digs a grave under the 3 oaks that mark the hidden dungeon, and it takes him 3 hours with a flat stone and his bare hands. His fingers are bleeding and his back is on fire, and he doesn't stop until the hole is deep enough. He wraps Do-hyun in his own cloak and lowers him into the earth and fills the grave stone by stone. He finds a piece of fallen oak and carves Do-hyun's name into it with his rusty knife. The knife still glows faintly green, and the light pulses like a heartbeat. Chae-won stands over the grave, and his voice is raw, and his eyes are dry. And he says he's going to finish what they started. He says Gang Yu-jin is going to pay for every drop of blood and every lie and every stolen inch of land. He says Do-hyun's death won't be a footnote in someone else's story. Then he turns and walks into the forest, and he doesn't look back. The eastern mountains are 3 days from Manhwa, and the peaks are frozen even in summer. He knows what lives up there, and he's read the guild reports and the bounty listings. Ice wolves hunt in packs of 12, and their alpha is a level 40 monster with a hide like frozen steel. He doesn't care about the odds, and he doesn't care about the danger, and he just walks. The first day is a blur of pain and exhaustion, and he stops only to drink from streams and eat wild berries. His back is healing faster than it should, and by nightfall, the wound is a thick pink scar. The second day he reaches the foothills, and the temperature drops, and his breath turns to fog. He finds the tracks of a wolf pack in the snow and follows them up the slope. The third day he sees them, and there are 14 wolves moving through a narrow pass between 2 cliffs. Their coats are white, and their eyes are blue, and their breath freezes in the air. The alpha is at the front, and it's bigger than the others, and its shoulder comes up to Jae-won's chest. Chae-won doesn't hesitate, and he doesn't try to pick them off one by one. He walks into the pass, and the wolves turn and the alpha growls, and the pack fans out around him. He's level 24, and they are faster and stronger, and there are 14 of them, and 1 of him. The first wolf lunges, and he sidesteps and grabs its leg and drains. The level-ups hit, and his body screams, but he's gotten used to the pain. The wolf collapses, and he's already moving, and the second one is on him before he can breathe. He takes a bite to his forearm, and the teeth sink deep, and he drains the wolf through the wound. The EXP flows into him, and the bite starts healing before the wolf hits the ground. The pack circles tighter, and the alpha watches with those cold blue eyes. 3 wolves charge at once, and Jae-won drops to 1 knee and presses his hands to the frozen ground. He's not fast enough to dodge all 3, and he doesn't try. The first hits his shoulder, and the second goes for his leg, and the third clamps onto his side. He grabs all 3 and drains them simultaneously, and the level-ups hit in a cascade that whites out his vision. His body convulses, and his muscles tear, and his nose bleeds, and he doesn't let go. 4 wolves are dead, and 10 remain, and the alpha still hasn't moved. Chae-won stands up, and his legs hold, and the green lines on his palms are blazing like twin stars. He levels again, and his body screams, and he welcomes it. The remaining wolves hesitate, and their ears flatten and their tails drop. The alpha growls and steps forward, and the pack parts to let it through. It's level 40, and its fangs are as long as daggers, and its claws leave gouges in the frozen rock. It lunges, and Jae-won meets it head-on and grabs its muzzle with both hands. The drain activates, and the alpha fights back, and its strength is enormous. It throws him against the cliff wall, and his head cracks against stone, and his vision doubles. He holds on, and the EXP pours into him, and the alpha is thrashing and snarling, and its life force is draining. The level-ups come faster now, and his body is a wreck of pain and triumph. The alpha collapses, and Jae-won rides it down, and his hands are still locked onto its skull. He hits level 30, and then 32, and then 35, and the system notifications are a blur. The rest of the pack runs, and he lets them go. He lies there in the snow with the dead alpha beside him, and his body is a roadmap of scars and healing wounds. He stays in the mountains for another day and hunts every ice wolf he can find. By the time he reaches level 40, he's killed 3 more packs, and the snow around him is stained red. The cold doesn't bother him anymore, and his healing is so fast that wounds close before he finishes walking away from the fight. He finds a cave near the peak, and inside there's something the guild reports never mentioned. A vein of glowing blue crystal runs through the back wall, and the light is cold and ancient. He touches it, and the system activates, and a new window opens. It says he's discovered an ancient monster soul crystal, and that absorbing it will grant a permanent stat boost. He doesn't hesitate, and he presses both hands against the crystal. The absorption is different from draining a living monster, and it's slower and deeper, and it feels like swallowing ice. His level jumps from 40 to 43, and then to 47, and the crystal's glow fades. He finds 3 more veins in the cave, and by the time the last one is drained, he's level 50. The final level up hits, and something shifts inside him, and the system window flashes with a new notification. It says he's unlocked an ability, and the name of the ability is Soul Link. He reads the description and his eyes widen and his hands shake. Soul Link lets him share a portion of his stats with one ally for a limited time. Do-hyun's face flashes in his mind, and he clenches his fists, and the green lines on his palms pulse once and steady. He's too late to save the one person who stood by him, but he's not too late to use what he's learned. He walks out of the cave, and the sun is setting over the mountains, and the sky is a sheet of gold and purple. He's level 50, and his body is a weapon, and his power has grown beyond anything he imagined. But Gang Yu-jin is still alive, and the monarch's heart is still buried under his family's land. Jae-won starts walking back toward Yeonhwa, and his stride is steady, and his eyes are hard. He's got a new ability, and a new level, and a debt that can only be paid in blood. The tournament was just the opening move, and the real game hasn't even started yet. He doesn't walk through the front gate like some idiot. Our boy studied this estate for 2 days from a ridge half a kilometer east. The main house sits on a hill with sightlines that cover every approach, and guards patrol in overlapping rotations. But the excavation site is behind the house, where the old orchard used to be. And that part of the property backs up against a sheer cliff that nobody watches, because nobody is stupid enough to climb a 40-meter cliff face in the dark. Jae-won waits until the moon disappears behind a cloud, and then he moves. His fingers find cracks in the stone that would have been invisible to him 3 weeks ago. But he's level 50 now, and his body is a different machine entirely. The climb takes him 11 minutes, and he doesn't make a sound. At the top, he pulls himself over the edge and drops into a crouch behind a row of overgrown apple trees. The orchard is dead, and the trees are skeletal, and the ground is torn open like a wound. A massive excavation pit cuts through the center of what used to be his family's land. Wooden support beams line the walls, and torches flicker at intervals down the shaft. He counts 6 guards above ground, and he can hear more voices echoing up from below. The pit goes deep, and at the bottom, something glows with a cold white light that pulses like a heartbeat. Jae-won's palms tingle, and the green lines on his skin start to brighten. His power recognizes what's down there before his eyes do. He stays low and circles around the eastern edge of the pit, where the shadows are thickest. 2 guards stand at the top of a wooden staircase that descends into the excavation. They're wearing Viridian Trust colors, and their hands rest on sword hilts, and they're bored. Board guards are the easiest kind. Jae-won picks up a chunk of dead branch and throws it toward the western side of the pit. The clatter draws both guards, and they step away from the staircase to investigate. He's past them and down the stairs before they turn back around. The staircase goes deep, and the air gets colder with every step, and the pulsing light grows brighter. At the bottom, the shaft opens into a massive underground chamber that wasn't here when he was a child. This is not a natural cave, and it's not a dungeon. Gang Yu-jin built this. The walls are reinforced with steel beams, and magical wards glow faintly along the ceiling. At the center of the chamber, The monarch's heart floats inside a ring of iron and crystal. It's bigger than he imagined, and it's not a heart in any biological sense. It's a sphere of compressed white light about 3 meters across, and it pulses with a rhythm that matches a human heartbeat. Cables and tubes run from the iron ring into banks of machinery that hum and click and hiss steam. And standing in front of all of it with his back turned is Gang Yoo-jin. He's wearing a long coat of deep blue silk, and his hands are clasped behind him. He's not alone, and 3 mages in viridian robes stand at stations around the heart. Each mage is channeling mana into the machinery, and their faces are gaunt, and their eyes are hollow. The machinery is draining the heart, and the mages are the conduit. Jae-won steps off the last stair, and his boots hit the stone floor. And Gang Yoo-jin speaks without turning around. He says he was wondering how long it would take. The mages don't react, and their eyes stay fixed on the heart. Gang Yoo-jin turns slowly, and his face is calm, and his smile is the same one he wore in the arena. He says he has to admit he didn't expect Jae-won to find this place so quickly. He says it took his surveyors 6 months to locate the exact chamber. Jae-won doesn't answer, and his hands are fists at his sides. Gang Yoo-jin gestures at the machinery and asks if he's impressed. He says the heart has been buried under this land for over 1,000 years. He says it's the crystallized soul of a monarch-class rift beast that died before the kingdoms were founded, and its power is infinite if you know how to extract it. Jae-won asks if that's why he killed his father. The words hang in the cold air, and Gang Yoo-jin's smile doesn't waver. He says yes. He says it like he's confirming the weather. Gang Yoo-jin says Heo Jae-won's father was a stubborn man who refused to sell the land. He says he offered him gold and titles and a position in the capital. And the old man turned him down every single time. So he had him killed. And then he had his son banished. And the best part is that the entire council believed Jae-won was just a talentless waste who finally got what he deserved. Nobody even questioned it. Jae-won's vision goes red at the edges, and the green lines on his palms flare bright enough to cast shadows. Gang Yoo-jin notices the glow, and his eyes narrow with interest. He says that's new, and he asks what kind of power a level 1 corpse robber could have found in the wilderness. Jae-won doesn't answer, and he lunges. He crosses 10 meters in less than a second, and his fist swings for Gang Yoo-jin's face. But Gang Yoo-jin is level 82. And he's been a warrior for 30 years. He sidesteps the punch without effort and grabs Jae-won's wrist and twists. The bones in Jae-won's forearm grind together and pain explodes up to his shoulder. Gang Yoo-jin throws him across the chamber, and he hits the steel wall and drops to the floor. He's back on his feet in an instant, and his arm is already healing. And Gang Yoo-jin's eyebrows rise. He says, "That's interesting." He says most people don't get up after that. Jae-won charges again, and this time, he feints left and goes right. His fist connects with Gang Yoo-jin's ribs, and the impact is solid. But Gang Yoo-jin doesn't flinch, and he drives an elbow into Jae-won's spine. Jae-won drops to his knees, and Gang Yoo-jin kicks him in the chest and sends him skidding across the stone. Blood fills his mouth, and his vision doubles, and his power is screaming at him. The heart is right there, and it's pulsing, and it's alive. And he can feel it calling to him, not to be drained slowly through machines, but to be absorbed all at once. Gang Yoo-jin walks toward him, and his boots echo on the stone. He says Jae-won's father died the same way, and on his knees and begging. He says the old man asked him to spare his son, and he promised he would. And then he drove a blade through his heart, and watched the light leave his eyes. Jae-won looks up, and his eyes are glowing green now, and not just his palms. His whole body is radiating the light of stolen experience and absorbed souls. Gang Yoo-jin stops walking, and for the first time, something flickers behind his calm expression. It's not fear. And it's not anger, and it's something older and colder. It's recognition. Jae-won pushes himself up, and his body is screaming, and his bones are knitting, and his muscles are tearing and rebuilding. He says Gang Yoo-jin made one mistake. He says he should have killed him too. Gang Yoo-jin draws his sword, and it's a blade of black steel with runes carved into the flat. He says he's about to correct that error. Mages are still channeling, and the heart is still pulsing. And Jae-won makes a choice. He can't beat Gang Yoo-jin in a straight fight, and not at level 50 against level 82. But he doesn't need to beat him, and he just needs to touch the heart. He feints toward Gang Yoo-jin, and the older man raises his sword to block. Then Jae-won pivots and sprints toward the iron ring. Gang Yoo-jin shouts, and the mages break their trance, and spells start flying. A bolt of red mana catches Jae-won in the shoulder and spins him halfway around. But he keeps running, and his legs are pistons, and the heart is right there. He dives, and his fingers brush the edge of the sphere. The monarch's heart detonates with light. Everything goes white, and the chamber shakes, and the machinery screams. Gang Yoo-jin is thrown backward, and the mages collapse and the wards on the ceiling shatter like glass. Jae-won hangs suspended in the light, and the heart is flowing into him. It's not like draining a monster, and it's not like absorbing a crystal. It's like drowning in power, and his body is a vessel that's cracking at the seams. His level jumps from 50 to 53, and then 57, and then 62. The notifications are a wall of text he can't read, and his skin is glowing, and his eyes are twin stars. The heart is shrinking, and its light is dimming, and Jae-won is taking all of it. Gang Yoo-jin gets to his feet, and his face is twisted with something that's finally rage. He charges, and his sword is raised, and the runes along the blade are blazing. But the light from the heart throws up a barrier, and Gang Yoo-jin bounces off it like he hit a wall. Jae-won hits level 67, and the heart is the size of a fist now. The ceiling is cracking, and support beams are snapping, and the chamber is coming down. He absorbs the last of the heart, and the light cuts out and he drops to the ground. His body is on fire, and his nerves are raw, and he can barely see, but he can feel the power thrumming inside him like a second heartbeat. Gang Yoo-jin is coming for him, and the ceiling is collapsing, and the mages are screaming. Jae-won digs his fingers into the stone and forces himself up. He can't fight yet, and his body needs time to process what he just absorbed, so he runs. He bolts up the staircase as the chamber caves in behind him. Rocks the size of wagons crash down, and steel beams twist like paper. Gang Yoo-jin's roar follows him up the shaft, and it's a sound of pure fury. Jae-won reaches the surface, and the guards are running and nobody tries to stop him. He sprints toward the cliff and dives off the edge and catches a root 20 meters down. The estate is in chaos above him, and shouts echo through the orchard. He climbs down the rest of the way, and his hands are shaking and his body is a furnace. At the bottom, he collapses against a tree and gasps for air. His level is 67, and the monarch's heart is inside him. He didn't just drain it, and he didn't just destroy it. He took the whole thing into himself, and it's still processing. The system window flashes, and it says, Absorption at 42% and rising. He lies there and stares at the stars, and his father's face drifts through his mind. The old man died on his knees, begging for his son's life, and now that son is carrying the power Gang Yoo-jin spent years trying to steal. He stays in the ravine until his body stabilizes, and the absorption hits 60%. Then he pushes himself up and starts walking. Jae-won moves through the forest, and his senses are sharper than ever, and he can hear a deer breathing 300 meters away. He can see in the dark like it's noon, and he can feel the mana in the air like a current against his skin. The monarch's heart is changing him, and the process isn't finished. He needs a place to hide while the absorption completes, and he knows exactly where to go. The hidden dungeon under the Three Oaks is still marked on his map, and nobody else knows it's there. It takes him 4 hours to reach it, and the sun is starting to rise when he finds the entrance. The crack in the cliff is just like Do-hyun described, and it's narrow and dark and perfect. He squeezes through and drops into the first chamber of the Trial of Roots. The vine boss is dead, and the chamber is empty and the air is still. He sits down against the far wall and closes his eyes. The absorption hits 70%, and then 80%, and his body convulses. He grits his teeth and rides it out, and the power is integrating into his bones and his blood and his soul. He wakes up 12 hours later, and the absorption is at 97%. His level is 68 and climbing slowly. He eats the last of his rations and drinks from a canteen. The dungeon is quiet and safe, and he has time to think for the first time in days. Gang Yoo-jin knows he's alive and knows he has the heart. The man will tear Yeonhwa apart looking for him. Jae-won can't go back to town, and he can't use guild resources, and his alias is burned. He's alone in a dead dungeon with a power he doesn't fully understand. He stares at the wall and thinks about Do-hyun and his father. 2 people died so Gang Yoo-jin could play God with a buried monster heart. The absorption hits 99%, and something shifts inside him. A new system window opens, and it's not about levels or stats, and it's about the heart itself. It says the monarch's heart has fully integrated and has granted a passive ability. The ability is called Monarch's Dominion. It lets him sense the location and power level of any monster within a kilometer. He opens his eyes, and the world is suddenly mapped in his mind. He can feel every living creature in the forest above him, and every insect, and every bird, and every squirrel. And farther out, he can feel stronger signatures, and goblin packs, and dire wolves, and something massive sleeping deep under the mountain. The range of his perception is a kilometer in every direction. He can track monsters without seeing them, and he can hunt without searching. His power just got a massive upgrade, and it came from absorbing something that was never meant to be absorbed. He sits in the dark with his new ability humming under his skin. Gang Yoo-jin spent years and a fortune building machines to extract the heart's power slowly and carefully. Jae-won just swallowed the whole thing in 30 seconds and made it part of himself. He didn't plan it, and he didn't calculate it, and he did it out of pure, desperate instinct. And now he's walking around with a dead monarch-class beast's soul fused to his own. He laughs, and it echoes off the stone walls. 24 hours ago, he was an escaped fugitive with a 50 gold bounty on his head. Now he's level 68 with a kilometer-wide monster radar inside his brain. The tables are turning, and Gang Yoo-jin doesn't even know how badly. Jae-won stands up, and his legs are steady, and his wounds are healed, and the green glow on his palms has settled to a soft ember. Monarch's dominion is active, and he can feel the forest breathing around him. He checks the map Do-hyun gave him, and traces the route to the next chamber, and the one after that. He finds a side passage on the eastern wall he hadn't noticed before, because it's carved into the natural rock. It's not part of the main dungeon route, and it's not on any map. But Monarch's dominion pings something inside it, and something small and alive and human. He follows the passage for 50 meters, and it opens into a tiny chamber lit by a single mage light. A woman is sitting against the wall, and she's holding a map and a key. Her clothes are travel-worn, and her face is tired. And when she sees him, she doesn't flinch. She says his name, and she says it correctly, and she doesn't use the alias. She says, Heo Jae-won. Jae-won freezes, and his hands come up and the green light brightens. The woman holds up the key and says she's not his enemy. She says her name is Seo Minji, and she was his father's surveyor. She says she's the one who found the heart 6 months before the banishment, and she's been waiting for someone to come back and finish what his father started. Jae-won stares at her, and his mind races through everything he knows. The surveyor's name on the report, and the letter from Gang Yoo-jin, and the transfer order. Seo Minji holds out the key and says it opens the inner sanctum under the estate. She says Gang Yoo-jin moved the excavation underground after Jae-won escaped. The sanctum is where he keeps his bound monsters and his personal guard, and the last piece of equipment needed to extract the heart. It's a fortress, and it's guarded by creatures he's been feeding for years. Jae-won takes the key and his hand is steady. He asks why she's helping him. Seo Minji says Gang Yoo-jin killed her brother 3 weeks ago to keep the excavation secret. She says she's been hiding in the forest ever since and waiting for a chance to strike back. And when she heard about a level 1 nobody who beat a level 50 knight, she knew it had to be a steel wall. Jae-won looks at the key in his palm, and it's cold and heavy and silver. He asks what's inside the inner sanctum. Seo Minji says everything Gang Yoo-jin has left. The map shows guard rotations and trap locations, and the pen where the bound monsters are chained. Jae-won folds the map and slips it into his coat. He tells her to stay hidden and that he'll handle the rest. She asks if he's really going in alone, and he says he's not alone, and not anymore. He says he's carrying his father and Do-hyun and a 1,000-year-old heart. He steps out of the chamber and follows the passage back to the main dungeon. Monarch's dominion paints the world in light and shadow and life. Every monster in the forest is a marker on a map inside his skull. The inner sanctum is waiting, and Gang Yoo-jin is inside it. And this time, Jae-won is not running, and he's not hiding. And he's not the level 1 corpse robber who got kicked out of Hwasong. He's the guy who swallowed a monarch's soul and walked out of a collapsing chamber. The key is in his pocket, and the map is in his head. He starts walking, and his stride is steady, and the green fire in his palms is ready. The key is cold in his palm, and the map is burned into his brain. Monarch's dominion paints every living thing within a kilometer in shades of green fire behind his eyes. He walks east through the hidden passage, and the stone walls narrow around him. The air gets colder and wetter, and smells like old blood and damp fur. Something big is breathing down there, and it's not human. He rounds a corner, and the passage opens into a cavern the size of a cathedral. Cages line the walls, and every cage holds a monster. 6 iron cages and 6 creatures, and every single one of them is chained to the floor with rune-etched steel. The closest cage holds a dire bear with scarred hide and a metal muzzle bolted to its skull. Next to it is a shadow panther pacing back and forth, and its claws leave sparks on the stone. A wyvern hangs from the ceiling in the 3rd cage, and its wings are pinned with iron spikes. The 4th cage holds something Jae-won doesn't recognize, and it's a mass of black tentacles and yellow eyes. The 5th cage is empty, but the bars are bent outward from the inside. The 6th cage holds a hellhound the size of a horse, and its red eyes lock onto him the second he steps into the room. Jae-won stops walking. The hellhound growls, and the sound shakes the stone under his feet. Every monster in the room goes still, and every eye turns toward him. And then a voice echoes from somewhere above the cavern, and it's smooth and cold and familiar. Gang Yu-jin says he's been waiting. Jae-won looks up and sees a platform carved into the cavern wall about 20 meters above the floor. Gang Yu-jin stands at the edge with his hands behind his back and his black steel sword at his hip. 4 mages flank him, and their staves are already glowing, and their faces are blank and empty. The red crystal mage from the forest is among them, and she's smiling like she's been looking forward to this. Gang Yu-jin says he knew Jae-won would come back, and he says it almost like a compliment. He says the boy has his father's stubbornness and his father's talent for walking into traps. Jae-won doesn't answer, and his eyes sweep the room, and Monarch's Dominion feeds him numbers. The Dire Bear is level 42. The Shadow Panther is level 38. The Wyvern is level 45. The Tentacle Thing is level 51. The Hellhound is level 60. And it's the alpha of the pack he already killed in the forest. Gang Yu-jin says these creatures have been fed on the heart's energy for months, and they're stronger than anything in the wild. He says they're bound to him by blood magic, and they answer only to his command. He says Jae-won walked into the one room in the entire kingdom where his little absorption trick won't save him. Jae-won cracks his neck and rolls his shoulders, and the green light in his palms brightens. He says Gang Yu-jin talks too much. Gang Yu-jin's smile doesn't waver, and he raises one hand and snaps his fingers. The Hellhound's cage door swings open. The chain drops and the beast lunges, and it crosses the distance in 2 seconds flat. Jae-won sidesteps, and the Hellhound's jaws close on empty air. He pivots and slams his palm against its flank, and his drain activates. Green light floods into him, and the Hellhound howls and its legs buckle. But it doesn't die and it doesn't drop. It twists and snaps at his arm, and its teeth graze his forearm and draw blood. Jae-won jumps back, and his mind races through the numbers, and the math doesn't add up. He just drained 20% of a level 60 monster's EXP, and it barely flinched. Gang Yu-jin laughs and says the heart's energy makes them resistant to absorption. He says Jae-won's little trick works on wild monsters and arena pets, and not on creatures that have been bathing in Monarch-class power for half a year. The Hellhound charges again. Jae-won dodges and his heel catches a loose stone, and he stumbles. The beast's paw catches his shoulder and sends him tumbling across the stone floor. He rolls and comes up on one knee, and his shoulder is screaming, and the green light in his palm is flickering. Gang Yu-jin says this is where it ends, and he sounds almost bored. He snaps his fingers again, and the Shadow Panther's cage opens. Then the Dire Bear's. Then the Wyvern's spikes retract, and it drops from the ceiling with a screech that rattles Jae-won's teeth. The tentacle creature's cage opens last, and it slithers out, and its yellow eyes blink one at a time. 4 monsters and a Hellhound, and all of them are moving toward him. Jae-won stands up, and his legs are steady, and his breathing is calm. He's been outnumbered before, and he's been outleveled before, and he's still standing. Monarch's Dominion shows him every heartbeat, and every breath, and every weak point in the room. The Hellhound's left eye is still damaged from the rock he threw in the forest. The Dire Bear's right hind leg has an old break that never healed right. The Shadow Panther's chain left raw wounds on its neck, and the skin is still open. The Wyvern's pinned wings left holes in the membrane, and it can't fly straight. The Tentacle Thing has a central mass behind the yellow eyes, and it's the only part that registers as vital. Jae-won moves. He sprints straight at the Hellhound, and at the last second he drops and slides under its belly. His palm slaps the wound on its leg, and he drains again. And this time, he pours everything into it. The Hellhound screams, and its leg gives out and it crashes to the stone floor. Jae-won uses the momentum to roll to his feet, and he's already running toward the Dire Bear. Bear swipes at him, and he ducks under the claws and grabs its bad hind leg with both hands. Green fire erupts from his palms, and the bear roars and collapses sideways, and the stone cracks under its weight. The Shadow Panther comes from his left, and it's fast and silent, and it almost takes his head off. Jae-won throws himself backward, and the claws miss his throat by a finger's width. He lands on his back, and the panther is on top of him, and its jaws are reaching for his face. He jams his hand into the wound on its neck and drains. The panther convulses, and its weight pins him to the floor for 3 long seconds before it goes still. Jae-won shoves the corpse off and scrambles to his feet, and the wyvern is already diving. Its claws catch his back and lift him off the ground. The pain is instant and blinding, and blood runs down his spine. The wyvern climbs toward the ceiling, and Jae-won twists in its grip and grabs its leg. He drains, and the wyvern shudders and its grip loosens. He drains again, and the creature's wing membrane tears, and it spirals toward the floor. Jae-won hits the stone hard, and his ribs crack and his vision goes white for a heartbeat. He pushes himself up and spits blood, and the wyvern is crumpled a few meters away and it's not moving. The tentacle creature is the last one standing, and its yellow eyes are fixed on him. It doesn't charge and it doesn't roar, and it just watches and waits. Jae-won's body is screaming, and his arms are shaking, and the green light in his palms is dimmer than it's ever been. He's drained 4 monsters in under a minute, and his stamina is in the gutter. But his level is climbing, and the system notifications are piling up behind his eyes, and he doesn't stop to read them. The tentacle creature shifts, and a dozen black limbs rise from its mass, and each one ends in a barbed point. Jae-won takes a step forward, and his leg buckles. He catches himself and takes another step, and then another. The creature's limbs lash out, and he weaves through them, and one barb catches his thigh, and another slices his cheek. He doesn't slow down. He reaches the central mass and slams both palms against it, and pours every drop of green fire he has left. The creature shrieks and its limbs spasm, and the yellow eyes go dark one by one. It collapses into a heap of black ooze, and Jae-won stands in the middle of it, and he's covered in blood and sweat and monster filth. His level hits 70, and the rush of power floods his veins, and his broken ribs knit, and his torn back seals. He looks up at the platform, and Gang Yoo-jin is still standing there, and his smile is gone. The mages are looking at each other, and the red crystal mage isn't smiling anymore either. Jae-won wipes the blood from his cheek and points at Gang Yoo-jin. He says the pets are dead, and now it's the owner's turn. Gang Yoo-jin's face hardens, and he draws his black steel sword, and the runes along the blade ignite. He says Jae-won still doesn't understand what he's dealing with. He says the heart is already bound to him, and the extraction is nearly complete, and killing a few guard dogs doesn't change anything. He says the heart's power is his now, and it's been flowing into him for months, and his level isn't 82 anymore. Gang Yoo-jin steps off the platform and drops 20 meters and lands on the stone floor without a scratch. His aura flares, and the pressure hits Jae-won like a physical wall. Monarch's Dominion reads the numbers, and Jae-won's blood goes cold. Gang Yoo-jin is level 94, 12 levels higher than he was in the estate chamber, and his aura is dense and wrong, and it carries the same pulse as the heart. Jae-won's hands curl into fists, and the green light brightens. He doesn't know how Gang Yoo-jin absorbed the heart's energy without touching it directly. He doesn't know what kind of machinery or magic made it possible. He doesn't care. He's been out-leveled his entire life, and he's never let it stop him. Gang Yoo-jin raises his sword, and the runes blaze white-hot, and the heat warps the air around the blade. He says he's going to enjoy this. He says he'll carve Jae-won open and pull the heart's remnants out of his corpse and use them to finish what he started. He lunges, and the sword comes down in a vertical slash that splits the stone floor. Jae-won dodges, and the heat singes his coat, and the shockwave throws him against the wall. He hits hard and slides down, and his ears are ringing. Gang Yoo-jin is already swinging again, and Jae-won rolls, and the blade misses his head by inches. He comes up on one knee, and his palm is aimed at Gang Yoo-jin's chest. He lunges and reaches for the man's arm, and his fingers brush the sleeve. He drains. Nothing happens. Gang Yoo-jin kicks him in the chest, and Jae-won flies backward and crashes into an empty cage. The bars bend around him, and he tastes copper. Gang Yoo-jin laughs and says the drain doesn't work on humans, and Jae-won should know that by now. Jae-won pulls himself out of the wrecked cage, and his ribs are healing, but the pain is still there. He says he wasn't trying to drain him. Gang Yoo-jin's eyes narrow, and he looks at his sleeve, and there's a faint green residue on the fabric. Jae-won says he was just checking something. He says the heart's energy is in Gang Yoo-jin's body, and that means Gang Yoo-jin is carrying monster-class power inside his veins. He says that's close enough. Jae-won's palms flare, and the green light isn't dim anymore, and it's brighter than it's ever been. Monarch's Dominion locks onto the heart's energy inside Gang Yoo-jin's body, and it reads as monster essence, and not human. Jae-won doesn't know if it's the machinery or the months of exposure, or some side effect of the extraction process. He doesn't need to know. He just needs to touch him. Gang Yoo-jin's confidence wavers for half a second, and Jae-won moves. He sprints, and Gang Yoo-jin swings, and Jae-won ducks under the blade, and his palm slaps against the man's chest. He drains. Gang Yoo-jin screams. The heart's energy rips out of him in a torrent of white-green light, and Jae-won absorbs it, and his level jumps. 72. 75. 78. Gang Yoo-jin swings his sword wildly, and the blade slices across Jae-won's ribs and opens a gash from hip to armpit. Jae-won doesn't let go. He drains harder, and the green fire consumes them both, and Gang Yoo-jin's level drops. 90. 87. 83. The mages on the platform start casting, and bolts of red and blue energy rain down. One hits Jae-won in the shoulder and burns through his coat and sears the skin underneath. Another hits his leg, and he stumbles, but his hand stays locked on Gang Yoo-jin's chest. Gang Yoo-jin's face is twisted with rage and pain, and his free hand grabs Jae-won's throat. He squeezes, and Jae-won's vision darkens, and the green light flickers. Jae-won reaches up with his other hand and grabs Gang Yoo-jin's wrist. Both palms are touching skin now. He drains with everything he has left. The green light explodes, and the cavern fills with it, and the mages shield their eyes. Gang Yoo-jin's level crashes through 80 and keeps falling. His grip on Jae-won's throat weakens, and his sword drops from his other hand and clatters on the stone. The runes on the blade die. Jae-won's level hits 80, and the power surge snaps his rib back into place and seals the gash across his torso. He rips his hand free and staggers back, and Gang Yoo-jin collapses to his knees. The man's aura is gone, and his level is 64, and he's gasping and shaking, and his eyes are wide with disbelief. Jae-won stands over him, and his chest is heaving, and the green fire is pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He says this is for his father. He says this is for Do-hyun. He says this is for every person Gang Yoo-jin buried to keep his secret. Gang Yoo-jin looks up, and his face is pale, and his hands are trembling. He says Jae-won doesn't understand, and the heart is more than just power, and it's been keeping something contained. He says something is sleeping under the mountain, and the heart was the only thing keeping it dormant. He says by absorbing it, Jae-won just woke it up. The ground shakes. A deep rumble rolls through the cavern, and the cages rattle, and the chains clank against the stone. Monarch's dominion screams a warning, and Jae-won's head snaps toward the far wall. The signature he felt earlier, and the massive sleeping thing under the mountain. It's not sleeping anymore. The far wall of the cavern cracks from floor to ceiling, and a sound like grinding stone fills the air. The mages on the platform turn and run, and the red crystal mage is the first one out the door. Gang Yoo-jin laughs, and it's a broken, desperate sound. He says they're all dead now, and the monster under the mountain has been waiting for 1,000 years. He says the heart was its cage, and Jae-won just tore the lock off. The wall explodes. A claw the size of a wagon bursts through the stone, and it's black and scaled and crackling with red lightning. The claw opens and closes, and rips a bigger hole in the wall. A shape moves in the darkness beyond, and it's huge and ancient and wrong. Monarch's dominion can't read its level, and it can't measure its power, and all it returns is a single word. Monarch. The real one. The one whose heart was buried here 1,000 years ago. The one who didn't die and only slept. Its eye opens in the darkness, and it's the size of a house, and it's red, and it's looking straight at Jae-won. Gang Yoo-jin is still laughing, and Jae-won looks down at him and then at the claw tearing through the wall. He makes a decision. He grabs Gang Yoo-jin by the collar and hauls him to his feet. Gang Yoo-jin asks what he's doing. Jae-won says he's not letting him die down here, and not like this. He says Gang Yoo-jin is going to stand trial in Hwasong, and everyone is going to know what he did. He drags the man toward the passage he came through, and the cavern is collapsing around them. The claw rips another section of wall away, and the monster's head pushes through the gap. It's a dragon, and it's black, and its scales are cracked and ancient, and its red eye burns with 1,000 years of rage. It roars, and the sound shatters the remaining cages, and knocks Jae-won off his feet. He loses his grip on Gang Yoo-jin, and the man scrambles away toward the far passage. Jae-won pushes himself up and looks at the dragon, and then at the fleeing Gang Yoo-jin. The dragon's eye tracks him, and its mouth opens, and red light gathers in its throat. Jae-won runs. He sprints for the passage, and the dragon's breath hits the spot where he was standing, and the stone melts into slag. He dives into the tunnel, and the heat singes his back, and his coat catches fire. He tears it off and keeps running, and the tunnel is shaking, and sections of the ceiling are dropping behind him. He rounds the corner and bursts into the main dungeon chamber, and the three oaks are ahead, and daylight is filtering through the entrance. The roar echoes through the tunnel, and the ground splits, and a fissure opens behind him. He jumps and grabs the lip of the entrance, and hauls himself out into the forest. The ground under the three oaks collapses, and the entire dungeon caves in, and a plume of dust and smoke erupts into the sky. Jae-won lies on his back in the grass, and his chest is heaving, and his body is covered in burns and cuts and monster blood. The ground stops shaking, and the dust settles, and the entrance is gone. And the three oaks are tilted and half sunken into the earth. Monarch's dominion still reads the dragon, and it's moving, and it's deep underground, and it's digging its way toward the surface. Jae-won closes his eyes, and his level is 80, and the heart's power is fully integrated, and he just woke up a 1,000-year-old monarch class. Dragon. He laughs, and it's weak and exhausted, and a little bit hysterical. He came here to destroy Gang Yu-jin, and he did it. But he also opened a door that can't be closed. Gang Yu-jin is somewhere in the forest, and the dragon is climbing toward daylight, and Jae-won is lying in the grass with a dead man's key in his pocket. He opens his eyes and pushes himself up, and his legs are shaky, but they hold. The dragon will reach the surface in hours and maybe less. He doesn't have time to rest, and he doesn't have time to hunt Gang Yu-jin through the woods. He has to warn someone, and he has to find a way to stop something that was sealed 1,000 years ago. He looks at the tilted oaks, and Do-hyun's grave is still intact, and the carved piece of wood is still there. He touches it once, and then turns and starts walking east. The dragon's roar echoes from deep underground, and the forest goes silent, and every creature within a kilometer flees. Jae-won walks, and his stride is steady, and the green fire in his palms is ready. The sky darkens, and the first fissure opens in the forest floor, and red light bleeds through the crack.